1, go.
All right. Hello, everybody. Hey, Jayson.
Hey there.
Welcome to Human Happy Hour. Today, we are joined by Rahul Dubey. Rahul is a health equity activist with years of experience as a leader in the health and tech business space. He is famously known as the man who sheltered dozens of Black Lives Matter protesters from police in his Swan Street home. So welcome, Rahul. So glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Jayson, Rena. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Humbled to be here as well. Rena and I have a decade of history of working together, and we utilize her talents in writing and journalistic integrity and staying honest to the content. And one of my first startups, my first startup actually, that was actually a transitional period for me. I had just gotten sober from alcohol as well too. So 6 months after that, I started one of the founding employees for that startup, Wiser Together, and here we are now talking on the Human Happy Hour. So I like to say that we're always connected, and I've always wished you well, and now here we are again, and talking about social impact and some other things that are facing us right now. And Jayson, I appreciate you hosting and having me on board as well tonight.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's wonderful. I actually have a friend that is a protester. She used to be anyway. And she went to Washington, D.C. She was one of the people that tried to relax people with drums.
Okay.
I told her tonight, she's like, who are you interviewing? And I said it, and she looked up and she said she cried when she was watching one of the videos while I was listening to her on the phone, and she cried, and she said, for me to tell you that we'll talk about what you did, but what you did means so much. And when she saw those people rushing into your house, that's when she started crying. Because she said, you have no idea the fear of people that people being so just being corralled really quickly because they want to thin the herd and have no place to go, and then a door opens and a friendly person says, come on in here. That's astounding.
What's her name, if you don't want to say
her
it?
First name is Stacy.
Well, Stacy, thank you very much. That means a lot to me to know that it's impacted and that had ripples. And I'm sure we'll get into that as well. But thank you, Stacy.
Yeah. So it was so wild, I have to say, Rahul, like seeing that in the news cycle, because I'm always watching the news cycle, like doing what I do, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know him.
Yeah, it was great reconnects that came from that, and past life and just in the past, and just a changing world. But I was oblivious to, I was doing the news, right? So and I was locked in. So for those 4 days after, and I don't want to take it out of sequential order here or anything, but it was on 3 hours of sleep across 58 hours. We reached across 5 continents in 4 days. I think I did 68 interviews. So I wasn't able to it was therapeutic as well, because adrenaline was flowing. There was paranoia going. We could get into all the surveillance that was happening here afterwards. But I was talking to journalists in Singapore and India at like 3 a.m. and 2 a.m. and really talking and laying out a lot of the things that were coming to me, because it was important to get that story down simultaneously. The parallel efforts, the government had their own kind of spin on it, and at a point 3 days afterwards, it was, Rahul Dubey lied. When you have your chief of police of, metropolitan city that you're a resident of 17 years and call you kind of public enemy liar number one, you're kind of like, oh, after, what happened as well. So there was a lot of things where I knew we had to kind of, I thought eventually someone would naively, and we get into how naive I was prior to that, thought that someone would come to the table afterwards and be like, yeah, listen, that got out of hand. We're kind of sorry about that. And, these are the things that, racism kind of exists, right? Prior to that moment, and this is probably the biggest revelation and change that came to me, after opening the door on June 1st here on Swan Street, was, that racism, white supremacy actually does exist. It was always like, oh, it happened over there. Or, it's maybe a little bit, there's some assholes in the world. And when I saw it immediately, where I saw this police, it was immediate good versus evil right away. And you saw it, I felt it. There were others of the 70 plus that were here. We've talked about it after, felt it coming down the street, like, and goosebumps a good 3-4 minutes before anything really popped off and the explosions and the tear gas went flying. So the revelation for me in these last 2 years, and we can dive deeper into this social justice and advocacy work, is, as an immigrant, first generation, born and raised in the United States, I was always told to conform, to be white, and kind of to fit in. And so, I always kind of was, very kind of shrug off the struggle and the original sin. I wasn't even aware of, that slavery happened. These naive things that were programmed into me really just shattered the minute I opened that door. The minute I saw the police and the authorities, because there were other metropolitan police and government agencies here, unleash hell. It was immediate. Like, the whole facade was shattered. So that's been kind of a major turning point for me in the last 2 years. And a lot, you look at a lot of the health equity work that I was doing. How was I able to even address health equity when I wasn't even knowledgeable to the fact that racism exists within this system of healthcare? And so unless I was wondering why these solutions that actually were proven weren't being rolled out, and it was the intent's not there to keep that equity kind of away from the populace, to segment off a good portion of it to benefit a few. And $3.6 trillion healthcare industry benefits a few in a lot of ways, a lot of dollars that go to the top. And so, that's helped me, one, get through my embarrassment of how could I be so naive to not see it, but then also, okay, now I know who the enemy is, and that's racism. And so, holy shit, let's go after that.
Yeah.
Before we get into that stuff, I'm curious. Have you ever been into activism or protests prior to this? I mean, it seems like you would have to be, at least have your finger on the pulse of it some way, to have the ability to do that in that moment.
I had buried, like a lot of people, yeah, sure, passionate about things, but bandwidth issues or shrugging things off and not, it hurts me when I see a young Black male get shot by the police and nothing is done. But I get on my plane and catch the next meeting that I have. And that's how I used to be. I did march, and I was the liaison for my son's elementary school, and marched in the DC Gay Pride Parade, and got the kids to march in that as well. That was already set up when my son enrolled there. But we were involved. I wouldn't say I was an activist, but socially leaning, yes, but really not, and volunteering here and there, but not an activist in any way. And it was always, I thought I was in some way. I mean, you always convince yourself you're doing some good work in healthcare, bringing behavioral health tools to the underserved population, working with state Medicaid departments, driving innovation to drive down lower costs and make care and high cost prescriptions more accessible. So, but never, and talking about that and talking about consumerism, but not driving anything, using it as a means to a solution to transform a U.S. healthcare system, for sure. And that innovation has helped me in a lot of other things. But to advocate publicly, or to even really be in a march, sure, I would see a march go down the street and I would stand up and give it its respect, but I wasn't the one rallying in a way that I'm showing up to things now.
So let's kind of, I guess, start from the beginning, right? Like, we're now 2 years in, so we'll kind of like ask you about the beginning and then kind of progress, as things have changed for you. But yeah, like, so that night, right? Like, what were you thinking? What was happening? And also, you opened your door, right? But you live in a block where there's row homes. Were you?
Yes.
I'm guessing 70 some people rushed into your house. You were the only one to open the door.
Let me paint the night for you. It's kind of in 3 segments, because we were under siege for 10 hours in this house. And so it was about 7 p.m. or so, gorgeous night like tonight. If you look out, this is the big bay window that's right outside. It's just a gorgeous June night. And I I was doing some work. I have a social impact endeavor that I started accidentally in Medellin, Colombia, and I was meeting for the first time with the Colombian embassy in Washington, D.C. on June 2nd. And I also had a meeting with the World Bank in the afternoon. So I was just doing some prep work in this room here. And I saw that they announced curfew. And I like walking. I'm a night owl and I like taking walks. The city's gorgeous at night when there's no crowds. But I thought I would take a walk out earlier because of curfew. And I kind of knew things were going to get messy. I had no idea what was happening by the White House. I knew that former President Trump had spoken in the Rose Garden earlier at like 4 or 5 p.m., but I didn't know what was happening at Lafayette Square. And so I took a lap around probably like 8 o'clock, and there's a Freemason temple up about 2 blocks away, and gorgeous Mediterranean sky, kind of 3/4 moon, took a couple pictures, walked back, and there were about 150 police officers on the corner of my street as I'm walking back. And they weren't there when I left. And I was like, what is going on? So I approached one of the commanding officers wearing a white shirt. And I was like, hey, I need to get through. I live right there. He's like, can't do it. I'm like, buddy, I know something's going on. Is this a training drill or whatever? Can you let me through? And he's like, no way. I'm like, where do you want me to go? There's a global pandemic going on. Everything's closed. Like, I'm 3 houses in. I'll go right in. And he let me through. And as I was going through, I get slammed into this wall that's a church across the street. And literally, Rena and Jayson, they were, 3 times the size of me, padded up, riot gear, just like they're going to war. And like almost knocked the breath out of me. But I was more startled than anything else. And the guy who let me through was like, hey, let him through. And so I just kind of looked at them, waiting for them to be like, sorry, dude, right? No, it was like ice cold, nothing in their veins. And I came inside, and so now there's like, I come out on my stoop, I grabbed some water, I went downstairs, grabbed some water, I came back up, and I'm standing on my stoop. So I'm actually outside, and no one is on my street. This street, Swan Street, was rated one of the 10 most prettiest streets in the world in the autumn. It's like row houses, and it's a unique street because there's no alleys on the street. DC's got usually alleys halfway through the block. But a couple alleys along the block, but this one doesn't. It's completely connected row houses and these great canopy of trees. So all of a sudden, there's a couple people walking toward where the cops are bottlenecked off and blocked off that entrance, that intersection. And usually when I've lived here for 8 years now, and usually when people walk, they walk the other way because that's where the restaurants, bars, and nightlife are. So no one's walking this way. And I see a couple of people carrying signs, but they're in like 2s or 3s. This is not a mass crowd. And I'm just kind of like, kind of looking at them going like, where do you think you're going to go? Like, you should go back the other way. And from marching in the Gay Pride Parade, I know you disperse a crowd 3 blocks north of here because there's like 6 intersections where people can get away. It's a safe way to do it. So 15 minutes go by, and now all of a sudden you got like 100 people scattered there, more cops. There's a military helicopter above the house. I'm like, about 200 feet above my house is a military helicopter swirling. There's a lot of helicopters in the city, but none of them hover, okay? And so all of a sudden, probably 40 minutes of being on the stoop, it fills up, and there's like 400 people on Swan Street. And they're just kind of asking, like, let us through. What's going on here? All of these things. And they're chanting, let us through, let us through. Peacefully. Nothing is happening. There's a couple of people sitting on my stoop. Someone went in to use my bathroom, and another person was charging their cell phone here because, they're standing around. I'm like, where are you coming from? And everyone had a different story of where they were coming from. It was odd, Rena. Like, usually it was like, okay, we moved them from one block to another, right? But this was like, no, we were over on V Street. And the other one was like, we were at Lafayette Square. And another one was like, we were on 11th. It was like all these dots south of here. And I'm unfamiliar with what's happening. I'm like, okay, guys, have a seat. I think you're going to be here for a minute, but you're welcome to sit down here. And so all of a sudden, I just got this chill. It's like 9:15. I got this chill. Goosebumps go up on my arms, and I look over to where the intersection is, where the cops are, and I see someone lift up this kind of cylinder, and it just went off. And I open up my door, and I look, and there's a mother and daughter that was sitting closest to me on my steps. And I was like, get in. And they're like, what? I'm like, get in the house. And I open up the door, and I'm straddling the railing and my stairs. And I'm about 10 feet above the sidewalk that's in front of me. And I just start yelling, get in the house. And a sea of people start running through and tear gas starts flying and I'm hearing screaming and this just bombardment and just the railings on the steps were like old wrought iron fence are like shaking. And so I like wedged myself between the railing and like hooked my ankle around it and just held onto the knob of the door and was waving people in with my left hand. And I had a better view of what was happening because I was up high. And so I could see the police brigade just moving down the street, just chopping down like 5 feet at a time. I mean, people were running away, Rena. They were hitting them in the back of the head, spraying pepper spray and tear gas into the back of this crowd. And they have nowhere to go. They're pinned in. So they're running in and they're scattering. And as I see this police brigade move about 35, 40 feet down the street, they clear my stoop and I look and there's nothing there. There's not a single protester. And like this takes like 10 minutes to happen. And I shut the door and the last person comes in, we make eye contact. It was almost like slow motion. He moves up, I put my arm on his shoulder, just kind of tap him in. And I close the door and I look and I just see the sea of police officers swarming. And I close my door and I lock it. And that was the first time I got in this house. And inside this room here, I'm going to turn it a little bit. It was filled with tear gas, people. I'm screaming, get downstairs, get upstairs. And it is just pure mayhem. These windows are open. They're spraying pepper spray into the windows. And I run downstairs and I grab a bunch of red Solo cups and I just start filling up with water and handing them out. And run upstairs, downstairs, backyard, secure everything. You know, I'm telling people I'm moving them from this floor downstairs and upstairs because this is completely gassed. So finally, I open up some windows, get the downstairs door open. This front door is absolutely barricaded and locked. And after that subsides, I decide I'm going to go out and just be like, okay, like there's a situation that we have inside here. So I go outside and they have probably 200, 300 people kind of blocked off, completely secured, blocked off. And I look at these two robo-cops that are like right near my stoop. And I'm like, hey guys, I have a situation in here. And they're like, get the fuck back in the house. And so I was like, what? And they're like, I could tell like there was nothing. And I'm like jokingly like, you know, who am I supposed to call? And like, they're like, we don't fucking care. Get back in the house or we'll put you down. And I was like, whoa, like aggression. Like I knew what took place here, but I always was like, there's got to be some sort of outreach that we can figure this out. Because I was still kind of like, what is going on here? I was scared that they were going to come through the door. And a lot was like, okay, they're going to come after us. What the hell do we do? And so I came back in. And the 70 plus that were here, it was the moment, like once the terror subsided, and this is like the second part of it, and I'll pause, but like how everyone came together. Again, this was like disparate groups. This were not an organized group that got trapped in the house. It was twos and threes, maybe most of them were ones, right? There were like 3 skater dudes up in my bathroom that are still awesome. But like, you know, mom and daughter and like a couple other, but they were all ones. And they all just came together. And, you know, that was really the crux of the meat of the next 5-6 hours was the beauty of everyone kind of taking care of each other. So I don't know if that was a good start or not, you know, but that's
oh yeah,
kind of how it began.
Definitely.
Yeah. So did you say the police were they were spraying inside your house? Like,
yeah, it was
once you all were in there?
Well, I mean, they were up on this railing here. There's a brick railing. And they were climbed up. There's bars on my window. They were climbed up on the bars, and they were spraying in. We had to shut. These windows were open. I had to shut that. It was just so hard to fathom. We have it on tape. I mean, it was people were tweeting about it, and I heard a hissing gas sound, but I didn't know what was going on. You don't know what that sounds like. Just mayhem inside. I mean, just milk and fog everywhere, and just people screaming. And there was a guy who was 6'9", about 300 pounds in the fetal position, rocking back and forth, crying. And you're looking, you know, I weigh 150 pounds wet, and I'm like, wow, they did that to that man. You know, ended up carrying him down, not me, but the group ended up carrying him downstairs.
Wow, it seems like once it gets to that level, it's all becomes very primal, because it seems like before that there should have been the right thing to do, And I'm wondering what would be the right way for protesters to protest and police to keep the peace because obviously they made a decision, let's get them, which of course causes panic, and then they go into a primal rage because you have to if you're going to do that job at that point once you've made that mistake. And then everyone else is kind of like predator and prey, and when they start running, that whole feeling, when a mouse runs away from a cat, the cat freaks out and has to go get it. It feels like that's what happened, because why else would they attack your house? Once they're inside, they should be considered done. Oh, they're good. Door shut.
I mean, that's a rational question. It's a very, very irrational situation. I would have asked the same exact question, and I probably did 6 months after, a lot of why would that? And we're assuming that the intent is to serve peace and harmony to the community, but that wasn't the case. And it's also not finite. There are so many decisions that rippled into this. First of all, you don't announce a 7 p.m. curfew at 6:30. That's that's going to cause chaos. That's first of all not possible to disperse 10,000 people within 30 minutes. And so why move that up? So there was no sense of consistency. The other is using decision-making using force and fear versus, love and security. And that has been the foundation of the United States of America. And so what are you going to do when even if it's not tear gas and it's a sound grenade into a crowd of 400 people, you're going to create chaos. So you are the vehicle for chaos. I can tell you there was not a single person stepping out of line here. They were trying to go home. And so that was and what I learned after is that they had used this maneuvering that we've used in Afghanistan to get insurrections out of large market areas called kettling. So we use a military technique in the nation's capital to basically sequester off and quarantine off 400 people on a ideal street in Washington, D.C. A lot of things that were coming to my mind were French Revolution. They wanted to see that chaos of people running through the streets and throwing stones through their wealthy neighborhoods. So they have a reason, right, to be able to double their police force, to have more budgets on tanks and guns and weapons and all of that other stuff. It's to justify their existence. And so what better way if you have a riot here on this street in Northwest DC, that is going to dictate decision-making for the next 20 years.
Wow. So what would be a best way for the police to handle it? I won't give you ideas. I'll just ask the question.
I think there's communication. There could have been an easy person you could tell. In that situation there, I knew there were 4 or 5 protesters that were leaders. They were acting like it. All you had to do is just look at the crowd.
Right.
Why don't you go to one of them and say, hey, listen, we're going to let 15 of you out every 10 minutes. 5 of you disperse east, 5 of you disperse west, 5 of you disperse north.
Yeah.
I'm not a police chief.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Crowd control. But that seems like, listen, we're kind of all in this. No one wants to do paperwork. No one wants any violence. No one wants to go to jail. Why don't you send your most well-behaved 200 to get out right now, and let's see how that goes.
Right. And does anyone in there need any medical attention? Yeah. That would be nice too.
I mean, it was just so absurd and that's why it was so, when the violence took place, it was very instinctual. There was no decision making for me to open the door. You saw what you saw, and it was immediate. What was crazy was that as much as my conviction told me how right I was to open that door, the night I was playing with myself that I might have done the wrong thing. That's how terrified, that they were going to come through and all this other stuff. But really, what did I do something wrong here? Right? Is there someone in here who maybe caused some violence? All of the stuff that they were playing in my head, because they had told me I was doing something wrong. I mean, I kept that door shut, and they're faking to get in. They faked a 911 call and made up someone's name that was in the house. We had this house in lockdown. So one, to answer your question, don't start by lying to people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
As soon as you see that, like, I knew that the chief of the commanding officer in his white short sleeve shirt and badge and medals was like, as soon as he came up, he led with that. And that's a lie. You're like, okay, now I know. Now we know what we're doing. We're playing chess, like, hunker down. Did I know it would go 10 hours to 6 a.m.? No. Did I know they were going to hijack our pizza? No. I mean, don't do, those are things like, if you don't, how do protesters and police get along? I think the police need to really not be involved until there's a need to be involved, but they're causing a lot of this, destructive morale.
Yeah. It's like they do some kind of preemptive thing and that causes a problem.
That seems to be the trend.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, like
systemic. If you look at it, you can't reform a systemic problem. It's throughout, right? And so look at the history. I mean, I've educated myself in a lot of things and have been blessed by having a lot of the 70 plus that educate me. But look at the reason why the police department was created in the first place was to track down escaped slaves. And, that mentality and that DNA is there, that everyone, there's a holier than thou and everyone's a target. Even though I worked in healthcare, health insurance side, the DNA of that, DNA of that was, a bunch of people came together, threw in a pool of money in case someone got sick so we could all take care of each other. So the oranges of that are at least pure and a moralistic approach. Then let's go track down other human beings that are property. And so that mentality is still there in all the teachings, if that's what the foundation's built on.
So, Rahul, I was looking into because I've also done a lot more education. I had firsthand experience with the DC police because the neighborhood that I lived in when I lived in DC, right. And I was like, these are not nice guys. You do not call them if you have an issue because they will bring the violence. And so I very much knew that. But what I have researched recently is like that the police don't have a constitutional duty to protect you. Right. And I think like that's the thing that people don't realize. Like there's this narrative that people think, at least people who are not people of color that have experienced this violence, a lot of people think, oh, well, the police are supposed to protect us. They're supposed to keep us safe. And and this funding comes and it's like, no, they actually don't have a duty to protect you. But like, look at what we saw in, Texas. In Texas. Yeah. And I thought because my experience living in the neighborhood where I was, there were shootings and we all knew the police wait till the shooting is over to show up. Right. They just sit there and they wait till it's done. They do not make any attempt to stop anything. And then they come in like the cleanup. Yeah. And I thought that was just something they did in those type of neighborhoods, but it turns out they'll do that anywhere, even in a school.
It's eye-opening to realize. I mean, it's protect and serve. I mean, it's right there. They lead with that, protect and serve, but it's not. I mean, you could see someone getting stabbed. There was an incident in New York subway system where someone was getting stabbed, and two officers stood and watched until after the crime was after it was done, and the Supreme Court actually upheld that. So why are we spending all of this money to? It's this facade. I saw the facade and it shattered. That was something for me, but I hope it doesn't take the force of 168 authority paramilitaries and a helicopter to change that perception. I mean, we saw a great movement in the wake of George Floyd's murder. 20 million people hit the streets in almost every major city. Summer was on just energetic in terms of wanting change. And nothing has changed. We have the same amount of police shootings the last 2 years as we did in 2020. That's disheartening. So, the police know this. This is not, it's just something, quell it for a little bit. They did. And now they're bigger and their budgets are bigger than ever before. So sustainability and the longevity of change is something that without convening, which is something that I've been really looking into, is like, how is the best way to convene. I'm an Indian American, born and raised here, right? But there's 5.8 million of us. I look at the ethnocentric nature of the Jewish community and how they're able to come together. I look at the Black community and the Latino community, and then the Asian community. So, it's, if you can convene these power, we're looking at maybe 55, 60% of our population, which is powerful. But we haven't been able to do that. So anyway, I kind of rambled on.
No, what you said kind of sparked something. I know everyone else has probably already made this connection, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. If police are not constitutionally obligated to protect us, and they have all this funding for all these military style weapons and training, what exactly is that stuff for? Is that to keep us in line? But if we're in our country, the people that would be doing something wrong or who we would need protection from would be people in our country. So you have to wonder, where does the decision-making process start with, okay, now we're going to intervene, but this time we're not going to, and this time we are? Like, what is all the money for then?
Well, it's another lever of control. I mean, if you want to control industry, if you ever try to look at innovation, hate them or love them, look at Uber and Tesla and SpaceX and all of these things. Like, unless you want to, if you don't play within the system, they're going to come after you. And they did it with Microsoft and all of that. And love them or hate them, it doesn't matter. It's play by our rules, get in line, or give us our piece. The old way, well, we're building new structures, infrastructures, and business models. They don't apply to ancient relics of the legal system and the divine constitution. So we have to be able to morph, but industry and society moves and changes and evolves much faster than government entities do. So I look at this police aspect of it, and it's blood and treasure. I don't know if you're familiar with the theory of blood and treasure. It's what is the populace willing to give up their blood for in terms of war, or their money for in terms of treasure. And so crime, Black people, brown people, guns, school shootings. I mean, Uvalde police are sitting here, it disgusts me. I have a son that are probably like, you know what, we're going to get more on the force. I see DC's looking for 374 more police officers, and still the $20,000 signing bonus to come on board if you finish the academy. That should tell you something. I mean, wow. That they can't get these people to come on board. So, they get these bigger budgets. They give this perception. I'm on an anomaly in Northwest DC right now. A lot of them love the cops. I've lost a lot of, PTA moms and dads that, would say hello before, but now think I am a cop hater. And it's the system. It's completely rigged. And they have put a target on my back for the last 2 years, and I'm literally a healthcare innovator, social impact guy. I mean, I don't need a target on my back. That's absurd.
So I want to talk about that. Like, how has your life been, right? Like before and after, like what was your perception and, life in DC then versus, in the aftermath of this?
Oh, wow. There's so much love. I mean, there's an outpouring of like real people. I've been here 20 years, and it's hard to find real people in DC. Yes. So many transplants. Rena, you've lived here. It's very little eye contact, definitely no smiling at people when you walk by them. I mean, one thing that I love is that I get in your face and I'm like, hey, how are you? Right? Like, but now there's like this underbelly of real DC that I've been able to meet and exchange and become friends with and talk to. I just hung out on the corner of McDonald's with a couple of the dudes at the corner boys, and we're talking to them about Juneteenth, and they were smoking a J, and I told them I'd come back after this podcast and maybe join them. So there's love there. I helped a Gambian artist, Dauda, a refugee from Gambia who's been painting in the neighborhood and selling his art on the weekends. And I walked into an arts and crafts store up the street and just kind of made an introduction, and now he's like the artist in residence there. So I feel like I've been given permission to be a member of my community, which has been amazing because, saying this humbly, I have a lot to offer and I've seen a lot of things. And there's been able to work with so much Black and brown youth in their 20s, and share. I've been, to 38 countries, 168 different cities. And been from everywhere from the corporate boardroom to, the poorest barrios and neighborhoods on the planet. So I feel like, they've shared with me how hard it is to find mentorship in the Black community and Latino community. And so I've been feeling really blessed to be able to do that. With that comes, 30% pure terror. I'm going to be vulnerable and tell you that it has not been roses. It's been a lot of anguish, especially late at night. I'm still in this house and like I have not, not asking for sympathy in any way whatsoever, but I haven't been able to sleep a full night in this house since it happened. I've never thought that there would be someone watching across the street. Now I'll be looking out my window thinking that someone's there, or even laying in bed thinking that someone's going to come through the window. That, the probability of that happening is very slim, but the fact that I'm even thinking that is just too bizarre. And so I'm aware of it. I love walking. And so sometimes I'll walk and be in a kind of daydream or night dream in my head. And then all of a sudden you'll see a cop car and that'll jar you. And so I've also truly can understand and really feel empathy and embarrassment. One, I'm embarrassed for myself, but empathy for what it's like to be a Black or brown person, Latino or a Black person in America. They're born with that every day. And perceived that way. I got a glimpse of that after 9/11. I looked, like I'm a terrorist, I guess, to people. And so when I would go to the airport, I'd get that racial profiling. But that was something I chalked up to, I'm choosing to travel. Yeah, it sucks, but okay, I'm put in that situation, get through it, and I'm gone. But, to be able to get a sliver and a glimpse into what it might be like to be through the eyes of a Black person and brown Latino person in the US, it changes you. You can't really go back to, corporate retreats with CEOs. You can, but it can't be the only thing that you do. And so, one, it's actually has given me permission to actually lead with love and put myself and ask. I never would have taken an artist to a bougie arts and crafts store on 14th Street in DC and introduced them. I would have felt like, what's my role, right? My role is like, yeah, I know both. So my role is to like convene just that and see if there's something beautiful that comes from that humanistic just approach. I didn't put a certain metric on it, like how much am I going to make or how big are we going to get and where it can be. It's my neighborhood and I walk and I see things, and probably more so than other people do. That doesn't make me different and better. It just allows that element to bring a different skill set to the community. So that's helped a lot. And then also, I've been able to speak at the World Bank and some other things. And so that's put me and connected me to a lot of people, in different countries, Uganda and Argentina and just great Australia, to talk about some of the work that they're doing. And that's led me to, be more look into my innovation talents in a more inclusive way. And that's brought me to the innovation advisor for Inclusive Cities Lab at University of California, Berkeley. And that just, started through looking into like the most vulnerable, which ends up usually being the minority population in a city. And so the disabled and the mentally challenged and the homelessness. And I was kind of always aware of those things by dropping off water, donating clothes. But okay, now it's more than that. It's more than check the box for me. So that's helped kind of negate the 30%. And then also, I'll wrap this up too. We're doing a feature film called Swan Street. It's been written. It's a 121-page screenplay. Beautiful South Asian Muslim screenwriter Farhan Arsad, who contacted me a few weeks after this happened and told me how much it was drawn to the story, how he followed it, how he could see himself as a 35-year-old first-generation brown kid growing up in Davenport, Iowa, who's been writing in TV for a while. But just had a few people reach out to me about a screenplay. He was the right fit, but an understory to that is, I'm a Hindu, first generation from India. He's a, first generation Muslims. Muslims and Hindus are not getting along. They're not. I was taught not to get along, and for him to write this beautiful screenplay about Swan Street that night and some flashbacks to my life and some other characters, it's just really what we get to be that change, right? So, he wrote it beautifully, and we got a production company in West Hollywood that's looking to attach a director to that. And we're doing a documentary that's in production. I have a known executive producer in Hollywood named Stephen Nemeth, who is working with me. I'm co-directing it right now. We're looking to get an editor on board. I'm telling you this in detail because this has been helping me with getting through it, because I have these two amazing things to be able to preserve the story, and then look at it almost, one, academically, and two, as an innovator, I look at it as a product. So I can delve into it. It doesn't make it easy, but I can delve into it a little bit more. It'll never be objective, but with a buffer. So I don't, and can kind of actually snake through the darkness rather than it just kind of bombard me in an improvisational way in the middle of the night or something like that. So I can actually delve, let it know that it's having that impact, and then continue to move forward, knowing that we have these two pieces to preserve that story that's being so whitewashed right now. So yeah, it's 70% beautiful, and 30% pretty dark, but I'm aware, and I know I'm grateful for my recovery and addiction to be able to draw from those things when I feel revved up, when I can actually feel my body vibrating, whether it is or isn't still in my head. I should go do something that is going to help me ease that, or kind of maybe put the phone down and take a breath, call someone, take a walk. So yeah, those are the things that come with it. But there's probably been 5 or 6 separate times where they have physically come up in my face, the police, that I've seen, and really kind of tried to mess with it. And I'm not a flight type of person. I want to sit there. I'm not going to physically have an altercation with you, but I'm going to, let's verbally dance. If that's what you're going to do, I'm not going to shy away from it, knowing that I'm out in the open and I have a great community around me now. So that does give me a lot of courage.
I'm going to pause. Do you mind if we read a couple comments here in the chat?
Good. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Kay says, like how Rahul said, the police were created to catch runaway slaves, aka property. It continues on protecting the property of the rich. And then Jonathan says, hello, everyone. It seems like the real terrorists in this situation were the same people who were sent to protect us.
Yeah. It's, one of the things, there's so many different kind of intentions that I have with the feature film and the documentary. The feature film is, you can almost do a lot of things right, and you can, be a citizen, ideal citizen. They call it model citizen and model minority. You can bury your head in the sand if you don't like who's in the White House, but it's going to eventually show up on your front door, and it did. And we have to be prepared for that. So you never think those things are ever going to happen to you. They use tactics from a different country, a third world developing nation that we bombed for the last 20 years, on our streets. So I want that awareness to be there. And then what is that metaphoric door that everyone else can kind of open? And also get to know the characters that were in this house, because they're everything. I didn't do anything special. I really did everything instinctual, opening that door. And then from there, it was the 72 that took over. They carried me. I mean, they are the ones that knew to pull their cell phones out. They're the ones that knew what to do if the cops came through, call the bail bondsman. They knew how to, they were tweeting live and IG live, and they were getting on with the journalists and the news outlets. I ran 5.27 miles in 1,600 square feet that night. And so I was running up and down. They were the cohesive gel that was carrying me. So, it's been one of the greatest things that I've ever been able to do, but it's all been compounded from, being able to lead with love and open your heart. Every time I've been able to do that in the past, it's always played out. The formula is there. It's just there's just a lot of darkness and layers, and which is a sign of society, and it's more prevalent here, but it's also the only place I think on the planet where you can actually remedy it. Do you know how blessed I am that I wasn't shot in the head after I opened my door? There's countries out there, Burma, Colombia, where I have my social impact. My 46 family members and my co-founder shake when they tell me how terrified they would be because they wouldn't be able to open that door because they know they would be dead by the government. So, on the other side of this, I'm not a cynic. I'm a realist. Like, that's an extremely messed up situation that happens every single day. Swan Street is just, we got it. We caught it. Right. But it happens every single day. Not do they have 70 people under siege, but the brutality, the division, the racism. And so, to be able to be a part of something spectacular like that across 10 hours, and to come together, it proves only one thing, that the small group of people and human connection can accomplish just incredible things together. I mean, think about how 72 strangers can come together across 10 hours, not destroy each other, but lift each other up to actually stave off the United States government. I mean, that's proof.
Yeah.
As an innovator, I love proof.
I live in Vermont, so all of this stuff is very foreign to me. Our news is like cow got away and stuff like that.
Right.
But I do have some friends that are police officers, which of course is, again, police officers in Vermont is a very different story, I assume, than in bigger cities. And I think one of the things that I've always thought of about this topic, because I do believe there's a problem with the training. I do believe that. But if you look at every police officer in the country, every police officer has friends. And all those friends are going to sympathize with the police officer. And that police officer might be an awesome person, which my friends are. They're really wonderful people. And so when people talk about this, they say the police, they say the cops, they say all that stuff. And I've learned something with in this country over the last few years, that you have to be really specific or people get offended and then join a different team. And like, say Officer Ted is a wonderful man, and we say police are the problem. Police are the problem. Officer Ted, who's a wonderful person, is going to take an offense to that. What would you say to the police officer that could be listening to this right now, if it's possible they would be, I don't know, that isn't like that and wouldn't be like that, and what should they do differently, if it's even possible?
Well, one, it's not the person, it's the system.
Yeah.
I mean zero harm to the officer. I love the officer. In fact, tomorrow morning I'm having coffee with the U.S. Capitol police officer. And so it's definitely not the individual, and it's not the racist, it's racism. And so if you look at, so let's go back to the system. I look at a healthcare system that is so corrupt, and I've spent 12 years in it trying to transform it, and the pay and the bill charges by hospitals and insurance companies and pharma companies. And so I knew from the outside as a startup, throwing rocks isn't going to work. I did go on the inside and realized no matter what, and I mean, traveling 120,000 miles a year, working 80-hour weeks, and just flying home and being a dad and going back out there, and loving it, being very passionate about it. But knowing that the system, if it's systemic, there's nothing you can do. I'm a big fan of Trojan horsing it, going in and then kind of fitting in and then jumping out and saying surprise without the slaughter, right? Like I do feel that there is that change to come from within, but not in systems like police, not in systems like healthcare. And so I think if there is a change, I mean, why are you really there if your job isn't to protect and serve anyone? I understand the paycheck. I understand this economy. We haven't even seen anything yet. But there's something else. If you feel like you have a duty to serve, give me a call. I'll find you a lot of ways that you can serve and utilize something you probably would like to utilize, rather than putting on a badge and being hated by a lot of your colleagues because you want to follow your moral compass, but you're unable to. That's got to drive division. That's got to lead to unhappiness. So to the individual, I don't mean you any harm. I mean, we had our pizza finally delivered to us, and I gave the people that had us under siege, I slid them pizza through my mail slot. There was an officer standing on my stoop. So, a lot of people in the room were like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Man, we are not like that. And this guy hasn't eaten either." So, it's not like I'm going to go out there and be like, "Oh, kumbaya, we're all together." No, you're still a jerk for doing what you did, right? But I understand that there's got to be a couple of you in there that, man, maybe you're hoping that you're there when someone's got their knee on a neck and you actually shove the guy off. I hope you are. I really do. Or you actually turn on your body cam when everyone else has it off. That's the other thing. 168 officers, not a single piece of body cam footage. They all had them off. All of them malfunctioned. Come on.
Oh,
so,
God.
It's just too much to think. And then you witness it. You witness a 20-something-year-old kid gets smacked in the back of the head by a club, and then a woman goes to pick him up and gets pepper sprayed in the face. That happens 8 feet in front of you. So, I would probably, Jayson, though, if you would ask me that question year one after it happened, I would have told you to tell your friends to quit. But I think I'm actually now talking to some officers, they have quit. This is what took place either on 6/1 or the insurrection has given them a reason to ask, what are we doing? That's the insurrection. The documentary is titled 6/1v16. It's June 1st versus January 6th. Look at the response. Look at the juxtaposition. Let's ask a series of questions and apply them to exactly the 2 days. See what that reveals. Why is there 168 police officers on my street corner before one peaceful protester shows up? Yet Proud Boys, 40 of them, are allowed to walk down the Capitol and break through, as we're seeing, and we wait 3-4 hours before the National Guard even shows up? I don't know. I mean, so that's what I'm hoping that the documentary is going to start revealing some things. And through that process, I've been able to connect with some police officers that they have to be asking what they're doing. I know I was asking myself that in healthcare. It's like, we have a solution that provides behavioral health services to the most marginalized, high cost, people in our cities that we serve. And yet we're not rolling it out. Like, they told me they were going to, but why won't they? Because they don't want to. Right.
So, you have 2 movies that you're working on. One is a documentary, and the other one is a dramatization of it. Is it like with actors? I assume.
Yes, it's a feature film with actors. We're not at the acting casting stage yet. We're looking to get a director attached to it. I worked with the writer Farhan. We got a lot of interviews with people that were in the house. It's definitely not parallel efforts with the documentary. It's more that night separate. I'm the protagonist. Flashback. There's some scenes that, one of the things that I grappled with on it was, how much I wanted to reveal of my addiction and my alcoholism and things like that. And so we actually delved into it. There was a lot of things unconsciously that played out here that night that stemmed from my vulnerability and being in a vulnerable position, battling addiction for years.
Yeah.
And those lessons of love and whenever you're frightened and terrified or in the most vulnerable position, it's not force, it's love and compassion that's going to get you through that. I know that. I didn't think I knew that, but I'm glad I know that now. And I'm glad I applied that. And they all applied it to me. So it worked out.
Are you okay with talking about that at all? Because
the movie or the addiction?
Addiction. I'm pretty passionate about addiction. I've had friends and stuff, but
let's ask people where before we get into that, where can people see the movie?
Oh, yes.
Well, we're making it right now. So
so when's it?
Where can they donate?
Yeah, or do you? Yeah, can people support this?
The documentary, I think right now, I think the next piece is bringing our editor in. We have some funding from International Documentary Association. We have a mechanism to gain funding through that. You know, the most important thing is always building the team together, who you run with. So, you know, we are in production. The great thing is a lot of the footage is already shot. So we're about 75% of it laid out and kind of know what that is. So I'm hoping that we'll go through a funding round here in July, and I'll be able to share some of that information with all of you.
Nice.
I appreciate it.
Great. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on it and
yeah,
let people know.
And if you want to ask any questions, I may or may not be helpful, but I have some experience making films, so I just
Wonderful.
You made me excited when you were talking about it, so I was like, grabbed it.
I would absolutely love to pick your brain up on. I mean, I'm an outsider here. Again, I find myself like, you know, where I was 12 years ago in healthcare and in early sobriety. You know, I think it's different. One, my brain was rewiring itself about, you know, the addiction. You just, you know, if I go back and do an inventory and kind of archival review of when did I start drinking at a kind of alcoholic level, and I'd probably say from 20. And if I really can look at it, I can probably go back to 17, right at college. And it stunts you. It absolutely stunts any ability for growth, both emotionally, maturity, you know, physically. You can rebound because you're young, but you know, there's this gap in me. I think that's why everyone's like, wow, you're so young. I'm like, no, I'm just immature. I just got stunted for this emotional growth while I was alcoholically, you know, inducing myself to get through life for 15 years. So, you know, you look at it and I pick up, and fortunately, you know, could have actually gone the other way. And you know, I had tried to quit drinking for a lot of other people, for a lot of other reasons, until I was absolutely knocking on death's door and was able to, you know, really contemplated suicide and looked at myself, and I was a nanosecond away, going one way or the other. That's how fragile it is. You know, we're going on 12 years ago. And I picked up the phone and called 911 on myself. So, you know, those are, and began the journey of not picking up a drink and, you know, relearning how to live. And so, you know, there was that going on when I got into healthcare, and I could actually kind of relate a lot of my own experiences in healthcare, navigating healthcare with an alcohol-soaked mind, and just your brain screaming at you while you're trying to kick the sauce. And you just, you know, what do you do with idle time and the anxiety? And you're so used to synthetically altering mood. 3 drinks gets you here, 6 drinks gets you happy, 9 drinks gets you euphoria, 12 gets you angry, and 15 gets you to bed. You know, you have that formula down, and it can be anything with lines and Coke and, you know, pills. It's the same thing, that addiction is going to own you. And no matter how much you want to stop and tell yourself you're not going to leave the house until 10, until after the liquor stores close, you're lacing up your shoes at 9:55 p.m. and you're running down the street so you can get that bottle. You know, you have to relearn, and then you go into like, okay, now how do I function in a real world? And so I came into healthcare that way. So one thing I feel about in Hollywood is that, you know, I have a little bit more, I have more of a sound mind than I did back then. You know, we have something that's real, that we were lived, a beautiful written story that portrays that in a screenplay. And then a lot of great people that want to work on the documentary with us to preserve the truth. And I can't think of a higher honor than to be able to try to stamp that in history before it gets erased. So, you know, that's what's fueling me. I was on an outsider once before, and definitely in a lower situation, lower level than coming in now. So I am also eager to learn about the industry. So I will pick your brain about it for sure.
Yeah, see, that's wonderful. I hope I could be of help. You're sober 12 years, is that right? What you said?
12 years next month, yeah. So
congratulations.
July. So thank you. July.
That's
17th.
like a 1%, right? 1% of people that
yeah, there's
something like that.
I want to say like 10% actually do, and then, you know, most of them, 8% will slip up within the first 3 years. But you know,
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely not a trophy, but it's the greatest accomplishment. It allows me to be a present dad,
Mm,
and it's really great. I mean, my son's amazing to me, and loving him is the best gift I can have. But you can't. It allows me to be a brother and an uncle and a brother-in-law and a son, and open my door. So yeah, and to be able to go in and I love traveling, and so usually when I would travel, I'd spend a lot of time at a hotel bar, an airport bar, a beach bar, spend the morning sleeping it off. And I've been able to go deeper and further into areas off the grid and meet like really special souls. And I was able to start a social impact endeavor in Medellin, Colombia because of that. And now we, are not as, you're putting toxins into your body that are just poisoning your thought, and you're doing it to self-medicate, and you're missing out on by numbing yourself of what it's like to be human. And so I've been able to kind of rise up from that intersection of not wanting to be on this planet anymore because it got really dark, because the addiction was so gripping, to be able to rise up. And it's a great it's there's no other way through it. Like, you can't go around it. You're going through it, and I'm
yeah.
just the luckiest person to be able to go through it and continue to go through it. It's now a conscious decision, and that's like the easiest thing in the world because I know how that ends.
Yeah.
Once you get over that first, the physical, the physio, and then the psychological. Now it's kind of like, man, that's death. If I go there, I know in 6 to 8 weeks exactly where I'm going to be, and that's in the gutter. So there's very rare moments in life that you can actually, the ending, right? You absolutely have tried to rewrite that ending, and it absolutely ends exactly the same way. It's like it's a bad relationship, right? You
Yeah.
know it, and like, but this is gripping, and it's you against you, and it's still there. I mean, I don't ever am tempted to go get a drink. There's times where I'm like, oh, that might be nice to taste that, but I'm like, no,
Mm,
it's just not worth it.
yeah.
That is that's a gift, and then like that's not easily achieved. That took me a long time to get there. But it wasn't painful until that moment, until that epiphany. There were so many wins, Jayson. I think you had asked me, like, you have friends and like to talk about the addiction. That's why I'm going down here. There's little wins all the way through, like going to the gym. Like, that was a win for me. I became the best shape of my life, not because I was obsessed with it, but I needed to kill 2 hours, right? Conversing with people and really listening to them rather than ordering another round.
Yeah.
That gets you to being able to tell bullshit right away. That's awesome, right? Like, not having to like tolerate bullshit. And then getting more things done by noon on a Saturday than you would all week. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
so it's opened up so much, and it's taught me that, love is not finite. There's no such thing as bandwidth parameters when it comes with leading with love. That's not something I would have been able to find in active addiction.
Wow. My friend and I were just talking about this the other day, and what you said about how you felt like you wanted to end your life. It seems like this country, because we're so trying to be capitalists, if you're not a productive part of the society, you're considered, you should keep that a secret, kind of a thing. Like, you're not being productive, and that keeps people keeping it a secret rather than asking for help and not being ostracized. Do you feel like if you would have been able to come forward before you decided to come forward, would you have had the same thoughts, or was it actually based in pure chemical depression, or like support might have been helpful?
I remember saying for the first time, "Hi, my name is Rahul, and I'm an alcoholic." I remember it leaving my lips, and knowing I was never ever going to be able to take that back.
Mm.
And like, it was out in the universe, and everyone's gonna know that I'm an alcoholic. And oh my God, like, how does prep school kid, Indian kid, like, what are we have this thing in our community, and a lot of communities, what are other people gonna think? Like, that's just like, you're done. Like, alcoholics were for Black Medicaid population living in the gutters of inner cities, like not you, right? And I think that that's like that with so almost every mental illness. People I love have bipolar disorder and still suffering from. Others are suffering from addiction, and they only have 3 Chardonnays a night. It's a lot. I mean, but that's or weekend alcoholics. There's just all this stuff, and I think I probably started connecting more and being more free when I was able to say it and not give a shit. Like, and that came with my success, though. Like, I can tell you, I'm going to be very open with you. Like, I was rising in the ranks in healthcare and being put up on stage, and I was actually wanting to say it at these conferences that had 3,000, 4,000 people in the audience. Like, I wanted to go up one time and say, "Hey, my name's Rahul Dubey, and I'm an alcoholic," and start launch from there. See what the reaction was. And I was actually told not to by some people close to me because that stigma, because I was rising. You're here in DC, you don't share your vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
You don't share that at all. Like, your review when you're sitting down, they might be like, "Oh, but he's an alcoholic and he could relapse, or he must, or any kind of cognitive bias because a family member was an alcoholic." You don't know. And I think one of the things that COVID has done has helped us empathize with each other and to be able to, because of, we know what loneliness is, we know what isolation is, we know what anxiety is. It forced us to the point where we had to be able to raise our hand and say, "Hey, I'm not doing so well. Is anyone else not doing well?" And what happened was, just boom, everyone started saying how awful they're doing. And in that came some joy, came some peace. And I think we can ride that wave moving forward. Like, literally, this not in a funny way. We're all really dysfunctional and fucked up in our own right, stemming from our parents, or stemming from society, or stemming from something. But we have to be willing to admit that, and like, look at that. And I value that. I absolutely value the dysfunction in the diverse group of people that I surround myself with, that we're driving, this human capitalistic approach to generating revenue and then distributing that to education and healthcare and infrastructure and all those things. I'm able to do that in Colombia through a model of love, right? Because I'm able to say that I'm not perfect, that I don't know what I'm doing, that I'm here out of my element, and you have the tribal knowledge. And so I'm surrendering to you. So I hope that we're there. I hope it doesn't turn into this self-help guru stuff that's been going on for a while. Technology's made that very easy. I think a lot of people are getting kind of trying to fit themselves into a box. And I think that it's the best way we can go doing it is, one, if you're on any sort of chemical dependency, you're not going to be able to get through. You got to get rid of that. And that's only going to happen when you're ready. But then the other is who you run with and who you listen to is everything. It's absolutely everything. And like, I've been fortunate enough to kind of procure this amazing group of people around me. That's the only reason why I am who I am. It's the only reason why I've been able to open my door, build a farm, have a garment factory and a shoe company and an art gallery in Colombia in a language I don't even speak. I don't even speak Spanish, right? So it's all from being able to really just be myself and have people accept you for that. I mean, it's ironic. I did my communications paper in college on P.T. Barnum. I was fascinated by the circus and like how, and then him, and like, it's always the underdog, and it's always kind of the outlier and the rebel. And I just saw this and I was like, man, he just got this band of misfits together and put them under a parachute tent, and people came. And it was just like conviction and saw the beauty in diversity. And I teach my son that, and anyone else that's around, that the number one thing you can be is not smart, but surround yourself with diverse people, and the intelligence will come.
I love so much about that. Yeah, and I think, like, I've spent years, writing and editing in the health space, and I feel like just only recently, like since COVID and everything, we're starting to scratch the surface in terms of allowing people to talk openly, about mental health and like how you're feeling, and destigmatizing, and it's still, I think there's still a long way to go. But
Yeah, I mean, so it's amazing to be able to open that up, I think. But there's also like I will get, not in an annoying way, but I'll reach out to a friend and just be like, "Hey, how you holding up?" Right? Like, just I hadn't heard from you in 3 days. You sounded down last time we chatted. I'm here. Like, it allows us to like enter into that personal space, and we have to. It's not just building an app and an awareness and like saying, "Hey, I'm struggling." Like, I need to pay attention to my friends. I need to know when my friend is, there's daydreaming and then there's bipolar mania. And I need to like, and I can tell in the voice and I can see in the eyes. And even if they're not next to me, there's a video call that's coming once every 2 weeks so I can see my friend. And I know that people did that when, I was early sobriety, they'd stop by. And some wasn't to just judge and check on me. They wanted to just see how I was doing, right? And that helped me accountable for a little bit. And I don't care. Like, you can bitch and complain that, it's my life and it's my personal stuff. Well, it's like, I love you and you're messing up. So it gives us that permission to look out for one another, I think. And that's something that I hope carries. Like, if you love someone and you are feeling weird about reaching out to them to ask them how they're doing because you don't want them to feel insecure that they have to be checked on, we need to get over that quickly. And like, no, love's like, that's just an act of love. If it's coming from a great place of love, then do it. If it's coming to putting me a thorn in someone's side, don't do that. Like, that's petty. My mom does. Like, just and then like ruins the day, and then she tells me she loves me and we try to mend that, and that's as complicated as it gets. But like, I think if you're coming from a good place, and it doesn't have to be someone you love, it's a stranger. I dropped off a water on the corner. This guy was hanging out by a telephone pole and just put it by his feet. That's, if he gets offended by that, then so be it. It's not on me.
I'm interested in the shoe you held up.
Yeah, there's a few of them. So it was I went down to Medellin, Colombia in 2018.
Try to hold it still because you're kind of, it blurs. Oh yeah, that's good. Oh, that's good. Go ahead. Wow. I'm sorry. Oh wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So I'm gonna launch into this. I'll try to keep it at like 2-3 minutes, but it's a little bit hard. So I went down to Medellin, Colombia. I love to travel in 2018. I had traveled a lot of South America from Patagonia to the Galapagos, but had to jump back to the States and didn't get to Colombia. So I'm supposed to come to California for work meetings in healthcare innovation. And 2 of the 3 meetings canceled. I'm like, I'm not flying to California for one face-to-face. So I had this gap on my calendar for 5 days, and that never happens. And so the girl I was involved with, her and I were kind of on the fritz. I'm like, hey, let's go travel like we used to. Let's see if we can figure this out. Let's go to Colombia, same time zone, 6 hours. We're there. I had just seen Narcos as well. And then I came across, have you seen Narcos on Netflix, the show? Phenomenal show, the history of kind of the cartel and cocaine in the 80s and Pablo Escobar, done really well. Very violent portrayal of Colombia and the murder capital of the world, Medellin especially. And so I was intrigued because I had read this article that Medellin had won the most innovative city in the world. I'm like, BS, like that's some PR tourist thing. I started looking into it, and I started looking at the innovation ingenuity they started using in the poorest neighborhoods. For example, they used ski lifts to transport people from mountain to mountain. It's in a mountainous region, 7,000 feet in the Andes rainforest. They put 6 outdoor escalators in one of the most dangerous neighborhoods, connecting 3 mountains and taking that climbing commute from an hour and a half to 6 minutes.
Wow.
They spent $4 million on these escalators and changed the livelihoods of like 75,000 people in this barrio. So I'm like, let's go. So I go down to Medellin, Colombia. I've been to South America, a lot of times, and I get to Medellin, and I'm there about 3 hours, and I'm taking pictures on this brand new Samsung phone that I got, put it in my front pocket. 2 minutes later, it's stolen right out of my front pocket in the city square. And I'm just like, and I played it back in my head, and I saw a coordinated effort, and I actually started clapping. It was such a great lift, Jayson. I had never I've been to so many different cities and nothing has ever been stolen, but this was like brilliant, right? So I'm
In
like,
the
okay,
front pocket, no less, not the back or a book bag.
broad daylight. I mean, bump from behind. I'm saying Lo siento, sorry to the person in front of me. Someone from behind comes in. I mean, I take 10 steps and it's like, they're gone.
Wow.
So I'm like, welcome to Medellin. I'm like, this is interesting. But there was a neighborhood that I wanted to go to called Comuna 13. And I'm going to hold this picture up and hopefully you get it. You can kind of see.
Yep.
So this neighborhood was part of the Medellin cartel. It was the most dangerous neighborhood on the planet. All trafficking had gone through there. There had been rebel forces, insurgents, and guerrillas, paramilitary troops in there. And the government was battling for this region. So this region had been transformed. And I wanted to go visit it. There's 225 murals. There's artists, musicians, and vendors and stuff. So I'm like, okay, it's my birthday. So I book a tour. I'm looking to book a tour on my birthday because that's one of the days that we're there. And I hate commercial tours. I have taken a lot of tours. And one example, in Berlin, there was a Scotsman who had been there 3 months that gave me a tour of Berlin. Like, that's just absurd to me. Like, if you're going to give me a tour, I want you to be a local. I want you to know what's going on. So I'm perusing the internet and Google Comuna 13 tours, all like TripAdvisor, Expedia, all these commercial big bus tours. And I go to like page 4 of Google, and there's this site that says Stairway Storytellers Locals. And I click on it, and it says, Jayson, broken website that's barely loading. I'm on my tablet, so my phone's still. And it's like locals giving tours about local history. And I was like, okay, cool. So I borrow my ex's phone and WhatsApp this guy, and he's like, yes, my name's Steven. I can give you a tour. Meet me at San Javier Metro Station at 2 p.m. tomorrow. And it was what drew me to it was it said free walking tour. If you're happy with it, you can pay us at the end. So I was like, that's kind of interesting. Like, like he's looking for tips and he's not charging tickets. And so I'm like, okay, cool. I'll see you at 2 p.m. And I look at the metro station, and it's like the most dangerous metro station in this city. And I'm like, okay, but it's past the concierge. He's like, if you go in the afternoon, it's totally fine. There's people that go for tours. You should be fine. Don't worry about it. So I go.
They're all in on it.
I'm sorry?
They're all in on it. Even the guy that said it's fine.
I'm thinking, like, there's a hotel that speaks Spanish, right? Like Colombia is not. This is 2 years after they sign a peace. They've been under civil war for 60 years. It's 2 years after they have peace. So there's one guy at the hotel who's like, yeah, go ahead. I'm like, it's daylight. We'll figure it out. So we get there, and I see, he tells me he's going to have his green shirt on. I walk up to the guy, says, Steven. He's got a ponytail down to his ass, tats and piercings. I'm like, this is going to suck so bad. Like, I'm just like total judging book by cover. And he launches in and he starts speaking English, and it's fast. And I'm like, wow, I'm impressed. He must be a college student. And he's taking me around, and there's 6 other people on the tour. I don't know them. And we're walking for a little bit. He's giving the history of the neighborhood. And I'm thinking, one thing I love is that he's not talking about the violence. He's talking about the Renaissance. He's talking about the flourishing and the blossoming of all the stuff that's happening coming from it. But he's not spending any time on like dark tourism or narco tourism. So we get up to this area here. I see this color and this music. And I'm like, Rena, how come I've never heard of this place before? It's just infectious. And I break away from the crowd a little bit. I'm always kind of within eye shot of it. And I'm looking at the vendors and the art, and I'm looking at T-shirts and all this other stuff. And I come back to him about 30 minutes later, and I don't want to interrupt him because, he's going through his story. And my ex is like, okay, we have to go to dinner now. And I'm like, because it's my birthday and she had booked a place. So I had to leave about 30 minutes early. So I'm like, hey, listen, I gave him 50,000 pesos. I'm like, this was great. I'm sorry we have to leave, but this was incredible. And I get on one of the escalators that's in this neighborhood, and I take 2 of them down, and something's pulling like in my head. I'm like, you know what? There's something magical about this place. And so I ran back up, and I was like, hey, and he turns around, Steven, and I look at him, and I'm like, come here for a second. And he thought I gave him too much money. Now that I know him, he's like, I thought you wanted your money back. And I look at him, I'm like, hey, you grew up here? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, when did you learn English? Because no one in the country was speaking English at the time. He's like, about 18 months ago, I saw tourists and gringos coming. So I got a notebook and I started watching English cartoons, and I taught myself enough English to take an exam so I could enroll in English classes. I go, what are you doing later? I'm in innovation. I'm not gay. You need to come to my hotel so we can hang out. And so we go to my hotel, and I just want to do this.
That's the best pitch.
Yeah.
What are you doing later? I'm not gay. I'm an innovator.
I'm flamboyant, like just in his face, excited, right? Like, and I'm like, come to my hotel, like whatever. Like, and Colombia like has a lot of tourists that come for partying and prostitutions and drugs and stuff. And I just was like, anyway, this is Steven and his family now, but he showed up at the hotel the next day. We started talking. He brought an artist friend who's done these shoes, who's done some of our artwork. We own a gallery together now. But they came, we sat by the pool at a 5-star hotel. They'd never been to that side of town before. Just 3 hours just talking about life and passion and questions. And I gave them, microfinance one of the projects. I was like, make us a pair of sunglasses. And George, you're an amazing painter, and you paint the sides of them, and we'll see if they can sell or something. I gave them $500 to get started. And I flew home and kept in touch with them on WhatsApp, and I didn't really care. I just was like, man, I'm spending all these times with innovators at Stanford, and I can't get them to do crap. And so let me just see if these guys can do what they can do. And so it didn't work out with my ex. And so I was free at Christmas time. And I remember calling Steven on WhatsApp December 23rd. I'm like, hey, what are you doing tomorrow? Like, can we come down and, I'll come hang out with you, and we can hand out gifts on Christmas Eve in Medellin. He's like, are you out of your mind? You're in Washington, D.C. I'm like, I'll fly down tomorrow. And I flew down there, and we handed out gifts in the community. I asked them how the sunglasses were going. They told me they failed miserably. I started laughing at them, and they got really mad at me. They're like, stop laughing at us. We didn't know what we were doing. I'm like, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at me. I didn't ask you if you knew how to make sunglasses. I just assumed you knew how to make sunglasses because I thought you guys were amazing. So let me back this up. And they were literally at the verge of tears that they lost $500, and I was laughing. Like I was gonna like just be like, you idiots, like I'm done with you. And I was like, let me back this up. Like, what are you guys good at? They're like, we can make garments, we can paint. And so I was like, all right, let's do this. I'm like, let's go check out some shoes. And so we got into the shoe thing, and they make all the shoes for Nike and Converse and all this. They make Air Force One. So we bought a shoe company, gave them half, told them to take the swoosh off, gave the shoes to his artist friend George, who wanted to expand his art gallery because he needed more artists to paint the shoes. So we invested in the art gallery. Then Steven's mom's been a seamstress in the Comuna for the last 20 years. So we went and visited the factory there. And so we invested in the garment factory when we started making t-shirts. So we put George's art on the t-shirts that Steven's mom was making. We gave her 50% of the garment factory, first woman-owned factory in the Comuna. So I'm going to fast forward real quick. Steven and I are on a roll. We're like, this is great. And they're like micro investments, $5,000 here, $10,000 here. I don't know what the revenue stream is going to be, but I have capabilities. So I started looking into fashion and I'm in the middle of the rainforest, Jayson. So it's beautiful. Like Medellin's just gorgeous, 6 degrees north of the equator, 7,000 feet, lush green, springtime year round. And I'm looking at the shoes, and these are all plastic. These rubber soles are not rubber, it's plastic.
Oh.
And I'm seeing them, I'm like, man, we are decimating the environment. Well, being from Detroit originally, I know the automotive industry would never have taken off if there was no such thing as rubber tires. So I knew that rubber for the automotive industry came from Colombia. So I look at my 21-year-old co-founder of everything and I say, hey, do you know anyone who owns any land? Because we need to grow rubber. And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I go, if we put natural
Takes
rubber
4 years.
in our shoes, right. If we put natural rubber in our shoes, we'll be doing a better job and we can charge more. And so he's like, yeah, I know people who grow. My grandmother's village that we were displaced from when I was 2, my uncles are all farmers there. I'm like, let's go see uncle and grandma. So the next trip, we fly on out to uncle and grandma's 5 hour. It's a 23-minute flight or a 5-hour drive off the grid. 2 years after a civil war where guerrillas are running around, and we go to grandma's house and we hike up to 9,000 feet to see uncle who's working at an avocado farm. And I tell him my grand idea for rubber, and he's like, yeah, we can do that. It's going to take 7 years. I'm like, let's do it. Great. Awesome. And then it hits me that, hey, what are you doing here? And he's like, we're growing avocados. Now, I flew in from New York that trip, and it was $6 an avocado in New York City when I got there. And I'm looking around at all these avocado trees. I'm like, hey, let me ask you a question. Why don't you guys grow avocados? That's like a genius idea. And they're like, because we're poor. We work on this farm. And I'm like, oh, and I'm still thinking, like, I had this problem of thinking peer to peer. So I'm in Colombia and I'm looking at this like I would be in California. And I'm thinking this is a $10 million spend. I'm looking at 2 full cultivated mountains of avocado trees. Oh. And so I don't even ask. I'm not going to do a private raise like, hey, guys, I'm going to be an avocado farmer. Let's go raise money, right? Like from healthcare innovation to avocado. And I just didn't want to make the same mistake that I made with the sunglasses. So I went back and I was like, listen, you guys know this stuff. Tell me what it is that you don't know rubber. I'm bringing you rubber. Like, tell me what it is that you guys can do. So tell me what this is all in. And they tell me it is all in. And we buy 75 acres and put in 5,000 avocado trees. I gave them half. They're my indigenous partners. And in 2 years from now, we will have a yield of 3.6 million US dollars a year, every year for 22 years. And Steven Alvarez, my tour guide, owns 50% of that on day one with his own.
That's the 5th craziest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Page 4 of Google.
Oh, that's crazy.
That is a wild story.
$66.4 million avocado farm in the Andes, and we're actually expanding another 100 hectares, 250 acres, as we speak. And it's just, look, it's been the revenue engine. The shoes were going to be revenue to generate more programs. This was not anything. It was, you can't go just fundraising. You're seeing it. You see COVID. If we were doing fundraising, we'd be dead in the water, right? It had to be revenue stream. It had to be sustainable. It had to be with longevity. And that was just kind of like, we did this so quickly.
Why were they growing avocados if they weren't selling them? Like, I don't understand.
I'm sorry? No, they were. They were growing avocados, but they were doing it for a commercial farm.
So you got rid of the middleman.
Because they can't own land. They don't have any money. They make $3,000 a year.
Oh, okay.
Right? They needed that initial capital. We bought that land for 75 acres of the most fertile soil for $300,000.
Wow.
I put it down and gave them half.
Wow.
But that land is worthless without the tribal knowledge. We have it backwards. We have been dictating our plans, our will. Like if I was dealing with someone, that has done some business in Costa Rica, they would have been like, hey, let's plant palm oil. Palm oil is not what it needs to be there. Like it wouldn't grow. The altitude's not there, and it's not good for the environment. There's no way Uncle and Steven's family is going to let me do anything that's detrimental to any portion of that land, right? So why don't I listen to their tribal knowledge and tell me what grows here? And I did, and then funded that and closed the juxtaposition of capital and resources and all of those other things. But it's all that. If you boil down to agriculture and sustainability in this planet, it's the planet and the people. Science will take care of the rest.
Yeah.
Right? Nature will take care of the rest. And so that's been such an amazing, and then to learn how the Andes and the Andean communities, they're so spread out from each other, but they're so connected. They have to take care of one another, but the entire chain collapses. And so these lessons that I learned, Jayson, in Colombia really did have an impact on me opening that door. I mean, they're all the same story.
Yeah, big time.
It's all this, we are this oneness. The only way, look, I can come in and be a colonizer and own 95 or 100% of that land and that farm and pay them wages. But I can promise you not a single tree would be planted. I gave them we built roads there. Right? We have trust. We're building a school eventually after the first harvest. I mean, those things, like I would have 2 mountains and I would be having to crack a whip or move down there to use force and fear to have them work for the man.
Yeah.
But instead, it's giving them ownership, saying this is our place, our dream. This is what we're going to do. And same on the expansion. I didn't say, ha, thanks, and go somewhere else. We're in this together.
Wow.
I am of zero value down there. I promise you, other than being like the court jester and morale booster. But like, I used to think when you're doing volunteerism or giving to charity, when you're spending time and volunteering, I used to think it was like this dignity that we're providing to the homeless. Like, we care and you matter. And that's normal to think that, because that's the way that we've been taught. But I'm so embarrassed because like a year in, there's nothing that I didn't provide any dignity to them. All I did was validate their true belief in themselves of how amazing they are. Like I say, like, you guys are great. They're like, yeah, we are. Like, yeah, I'm glad you know that. Like, you're special. And they have no problem telling me that in a humble, like, yeah, of course we are. Like, we know what we're doing. You guys got it wrong up there. And I'm like, holy shit, you guys were right. We're like, we kind of have it wrong.
Wow. So who painted that shoe? Like that.
There's an artist named George. We invested in his art gallery in Comuna 13. He's my co-founder's best friend.
Okay.
He's the one that came to the pool that I said make the sunglasses.
Ah, yes.
So
Okay. I'm there now.
How messed up I was. I said, "What are you guys good at making?"
Right.
He said, "Shoes."
Right.
Shoes.
Okay. I'm there now.
Yeah.
And so the rubber tree thing is just gone now, right? That's
the rubber tree thing is gone. And in fact, the shoes are now more of a novelty as like having the capabilities and creating a couple jobs. The plan was going to do a drop in April of 2020 and drop 100 pairs, limited edition, $200 each, and do a social impact. Plus, you get a cool pair of customized shoes, right? Like,
I think it's neat.
Yeah, those are so cool.
21,000 for the Comuna, and that's a lot of money anywhere. But like 21,000 US is shifting stuff. If we could generate that and do 1 or 2 drops a year. One, I can't survive on that, but this wasn't about me. It was a lot about like, let's pull this off and then, see if it scales. But then, like, breaking into fashion is not easy.
No,
right?
probably not.
And so it's not at all. And so when, like, here's the epiphany. When I remember, like, talking about it, they're like, "Why don't we grow avocados?" And I was like, "Because I can't put avocados in my shoes." And Steven's uncle goes, "Ask him why he wants to make shoes." And I looked at Steven like he was crazy. I'm like, "So we can fund these social programs." And Steven goes, "Well, why don't we just sell avocados?" And I'm like, "Why don't we just sell avocados?" Like, that's such a smarter play than trying to be a fashion mogul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So the answer is there. It's like, again, we get blinders on, like, no, it has to be an app in behavioral health. And it's like, but they don't need an app in behavioral health. And it's like, well, why not? It's like, that's just insane. So it's like, oh shit, what do they need? They need clean water. Oh, okay. Like, let's go do that.
You're right. Like, so often, like, the people that are in these boardrooms or that are the innovators, and they're not talking to the people that they supposedly want to do this altruistic thing to serve, and then they just don't understand, like, why isn't this fixing things? Why isn't this the thing? Because you're not connected.
The metrics, I mean, Rena, the metrics are off. They're so off. Like, I can't tell you how many times I was a distinguished collaborator at Stanford at the time when I went to Medellin, like my first 3 or 4 trips that first year. And the questions that I would get are just absurd. And they're the questions that I would get always, but now, and they are, okay, how are you going to scale? And what is the return on investment? I don't know. I just know I got a really dope shoe that these guys created in like this really cool, badass neighborhood that used to be the neighborhood of Pablo Escobar, the most dangerous criminal mind in the world. And we're going to go do something pretty cool with it. I don't know what. And if worst case scenario, it cost me 10 grand, but I got a great adventure story from that. There's a metric. And I led with love. Right? I was willing, not like those assholes, they're going to rip me off. Like, that's a lesson, dumbass. Like, you just gave a bunch of Colombians money. You're like, what do you think is going to happen? That's a joke. But it didn't. The opposite happened. You just gave ambitious entrepreneurs that were looking for a little bit of jet fuel You just gave that to them, and then you didn't let them go. You pushed them. You're like, we're right behind them. I'm behind them the entire time. And the beauty of it is this juxtaposition, right? Like, Rena, I was one of my mentors. I don't know if you knew this, but he was the former CEO of Kaiser Permanente, Bernard Tyson. He passed away in January 2020, heart attack at age 60. And I remember coming back after my second trip in Colombia and I would get like an hour with Bernard every probably 5 or 6 times a year. And I remember taking that hour and telling him everything about Stephen Alvarez and the Comuna. And then when I got off the phone, I was like, man, I just closed, and like in an instant, closed the juxtaposition between a kid in the poorest neighborhood in South America to the CEO of an $87 billion company in seconds, right? And I was like, and with ease, with joy, and he appreciated that. And I was like, okay, like that's my role, is like this juxtaposition, close that gap. And now, we used to joke, it was funny, like after this, it was like, we got to be able to, like, this is before June 1st, we would joke, like, we can't believe we got to make a movie about this. It's too crazy of a story. And like, we got to call it like
movie 3.
Yeah,
an Alvarez story. And so when this happened and then the screenplay started writing, I went back to Colombia and I was like, all right, guys, listen, I got to tell you something, like my movie's first and then we'll do yours, like jokingly. But like, it's, I feel a little bit, not to sound cheesy, but like we built the ark before the storm, right? We built this with this gorgeous farm with 4 natural resources and a biophenomenon and like all of these things. And then, coming out of like complete injustice of Colombia, let's not forget that country's war torn. And then, having this warlike scenario identical to the terror that was happening in neighborhoods in Colombia take place here to catapult us into, this advocacy. And we have this great foundation in Colombia of like working with indigenous tribal knowledge and women and empowering them. Again, there's no reason for this to work. I don't speak Spanish, but I'm leading with the right ingredients.
Yeah.
It's arm gestures, but it's a lot of love and Stephen's English and finding that right person. But he knows this. He knows the ultimate goal is to find a Stephen Alvarez in almost every city and be able to empower them, who's the community leader. And I was embarrassed that I couldn't do that here. How do I have an art gallery in Medellin? Well, one, it's more affordable, but how do I know artists in Medellin, but I don't know any artists in my own city that I've been living in for 20 years. And so that's jacked me to go and start working with them to say, you know what, now it's variables. Now it's like, let's close that juxtaposition from a refugee, a Gambian refugee to a bougie craftsman.
Ooh, that's weird. Something happened to sound. We can hear you, but you sound like you're on a phone on the moon.
Yeah.
Try again.
Yeah, I lost all the bass. It's like
okay, am I still there? Is it better?
No, not yet. It's very odd. It's kind of interesting, but I'm not sure if it would stay interesting.
A weird shift in the sound. But what a wild story.
Oh my God, I have so many questions.
How we do? Should I dial back in?
Oh,
that
yeah.
That sounds better.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I have a question, and after you've said all this stuff, my brain just wants to know what your childhood was like. I'm like, how did you get from a baby to there? Like, I know it's a long story, but like, just hit big points, like possibly.
This is becoming Jayson's favorite question.
It's so interesting.
Like, how was your childhood?
Wow, I mean, like, it's a childhood. Like, let me give you just big points here. Suburbs of Detroit. Parents came over from India in 1967. My mom came over in 70. Had my sister shortly after that, and they bounced around the Midwest. My dad was in the automotive industry, engineer with an MBA, and so there's this mass exodus from India. Not mass exodus, like 50,000 engineers and smart, science STEM type jobs were created, and so there was this small little Indian community in Detroit, in the suburbs of Detroit, that we got together on the weekends. But during the week, I mean, I was the only diversity in my neighborhood, in my schools. It was very Anglo, very Christian. So it was for a long time a lot of trying to fit in, class clown, trying to be good at sports, not having the genes, finding my way in tennis. Then I went to an all boys prep school, high school. It was Catholic, and not knowing really. And either there was a dude named Jesus. He hung on the wall of my friend's parents' house.
Right.
And sometimes he was happy Jesus. Sometimes he looked like he was in a lot of pain. He had cool blue eyes. Like that was that was it. There was some wafer that they would give my tongue on, like if I go to church on Christmas, like nothing other than that. We're very Hindu. But it was my dad went to Catholic school, and like there were the good schools in India. So plus I was a little bit of a rebel. So I had totally undiagnosed ADD. And I'm an audio visual learner, not a textbook learner. Like it takes me forever, even to this day. I love reading, but I like reading at my pace, not, you're not fast and get yelled at for it. But I love just great writers, and books become your friend. So like if I read 3 pages a night, I'm okay. If I read 15, I'm fine. But I had to, I struggled through school and got away with a lot because I had the gift of gab, and I sincerely was trying, but I also knew how to game the system and talk to my teachers and all this other stuff. But a lot of identity issues until college, where there was a little bit more diversity. There was a lot more freedom coming out of an all boys prep school to woof, that was it. I mean, a lot of love for my sister, an older sister. She was 4.5 years older than me. Rena,
she was wonderful as well. Yeah,
she's incredible. She's been she has everything to me. She raised me. My parents were, immigrant parents, strangers in a strange land, trying to figure things out and hold on to India, to hold on to home. That really fucks you up. I'm sorry. Like it's messed up a lot of us South Asians. I've been able to talk to them a lot about that too. But also now that we're getting older, like I feel there's a lot of empathy and now I can see sadness in their choice in coming over for, they left everyone 12,000 miles away, and moved to Detroit. And I was born in Indiana. I know it sounds like India, but why? There's, and it's not by choice. It was opportunity. I think that's a driving force for me in Colombia, is that we used to go to India every year, and to see that sadness and the people that are coming over and crossing over from Mexico do not want to come here. They don't.
Yeah.
And if I can create it helped me hone my goal in Colombia, my childhood, is create an ethical job there. That way they don't have to leave. And so that, there was always a sadness of leaving India, or when someone would come and they would have to go back. There was always this excitement around and sadness around getting a visa. Did they get their visa? They didn't get a visa. Maybe next year. There's just so many barriers upon barriers across, so much territory and borders that, it really has helped me kind of hone in on what's important. Like America isn't the destination you want to come to. I mean, I say that, I want you to come if you're being oppressed, but I don't want you to come here and get into the back of the kitchen and be by some sink in a restaurant on 14th Street, never seeing light of day, and having your kids just, for 21 years from now, for you to see them walk across the stage to get a diploma. If I can create something down there, I'd much rather try to help your kid go to university there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but it was I struggled with identity, but always knew I got along best with the servants. Our family comes from the hierarchy in India and the caste system, and our employees and servants. I wanted to play with them more than anyone else when I would go there. I would want to play cricket with them and go climbing with them, and all of just this oneness with people. And I think that's why I'm drawn to the off the beaten path. And you know, at these places is because I don't want to go. I like the posh resorts and I like taking care of myself and I like good food and all of that other stuff. But the real exploration is human to human, and that's definitely off a paved concrete pool, surrounded by some fake landscape.
It's kind of the point of our show, actually.
It is. That's why I wanted to have you on as a guest, because the whole point is to have interesting conversations with people of all different backgrounds, walks of life, and help connect, and find the humanity and the camaraderie, And
Yeah.
That's, you said the humanity, that there's something that's been spiraling in my head since June 1st, and I've shared it with everyone. It's just it was so easy for me to open that door, and it was because it was just so human. I just returned to humanity. It wasn't anything complex other than and I think if that's our march back to ourselves, I think we're going to be in I'm not a cynic. I think we're really going to be in a good situation if we can return to humanity.
Well, another thing about that, though, is I mean, I might be wrong, but it sounds like you are also financially in a place where you probably, I'm guessing, felt somewhat like, I mean, you were able to be a good person because you didn't have your entire life to lose. You know what I mean? And I might be wrong. I feel like, is that true? Because then that's kind of a problem with this country is that people are so protective of themselves because everything's like right on the line. Like everything could just go to hell any second. But
yeah, it's fear. There's definitely a fear there. And I mean, sure. I don't think I thought about, was I going to lose anything, at all.
Yeah.
But I was privileged, no question. I utilized my privilege in every sense of the word. I just didn't know I was doing.
And that's wonderful.
Now I'm utilizing my privilege now too. And that's other things. I have a fierce, amazing, talented, intelligent family with means. So if the cops want to put me down on the ground, I'm going to have a bad night. Okay.
Yeah, right.
And I'm out in like 12 hours. And I can take this, during a pandemic. Or do people think it's wise to quit your trade that you've excelled in, healthcare innovation, to go make a feature film, a documentary, and expand on an avocado farm?
I think it's wise.
But that's insane. And I haven't had a paycheck in 2 years, but it's full throttle because that's what transformation is. But that's belief in myself that comes with privilege, that comes with experience, that comes from, I've come from the depths of hell of addiction, and only 12 years ago, to be able to put myself in position to be able to buy an avocado, So yeah, can this crash and burn? Absolutely. Is it going to be my death? No, but it will. I'll just have to heal and climb. And I know I've already cleared it with the people that love me, that, the worst case scenario is that, I have to move into my sister's McMansion for 6 months, then, so we can see this thing go across the finish line, then so be it. I would love to spend time with my niece and nephew, and that would be beautiful. And once I get rid of the ego thing, we can really start driving change. Because my currency has changed. It's not title and 6-figure incomes and, amazing, hotel stays and stuff like that. Those all things will come if we create a new next value, but that's not the priority.
I love that so much, because I kind of have recently gone on a bit of a journey of just realizing, like, you shouldn't be overworking, you shouldn't be all of these things that we think, like, that are, I guess, socialized into us to have value, like that's not life. That's not that, like, that's what we shouldn't be, your title or your salary. And of course everybody needs money to survive and to keep a roof over your head, but this, like, oh, I gotta go for the next, and I'm working like crazy 80-hour weeks, and I've got that title, but then it's like, what is the point? Because you're not connecting with people, you're not living life, you're just kind of on this autopilot.
It's waking up to ask that question of, who do you serve, or who do you want to serve? And it's not myself. It's when I look at it's humanity. It's I love the fact that if I look at my WhatsApp interface right now, I'm going to have a really wide range of awesome people that are going to be listed there that I talked to today. And we are on a path to revenue, and I'm not naive. I'm a realist. Like, I know, but it's not greed driven. It's the opposite. It's love driven. It's, oh my God, holy crap, we're going to pull this off. Like, I brought so much joy to be able to introduce that story of Stephen to the two of you in the audience. Like, that's incredible to me. And like, I smirk at that. Like, even when we started it, like, I remember thinking like, man, if we pull this off, this is going to be amazing to talk about. But that's me like, I had to go do and then come back and be like, oh, look what I caught, right? Are you like, we can go do this. That is, I think, kind of my role. And that's where I'm getting the satisfaction from, is in that deliverable of who am I serving and how we're able to do it. And my measurements are so different. Like, Stephen is 23 years old. He's my co-founder and equal owner. This was a kid in the barrio that really had a choice of being a gangster, and that was it. And just 2 months ago, he actually took his entire family, I went with them, to a coastal Caribbean town. They'd never been on a plane before, and like on a real vacation. And that's big. That's mobility. That's something I can measure and I can feel and I can share with you, that in just a short period of time since 2018, when they actually signed the peace accord, you see this segment of the population that is becoming middle class and actually bettering themselves and spending time with their family. And then you see a baby being born and them growing and knowing some English. That's incredible too. So you're seeing this mobility happening right before your eyes. It's not an immersion program that, we've been taught to sign up for, some sort of seminar. That's just engaging. And I've been saying this, run with people you were told not to run with. It'll surprise you and like help you achieve so much. So I think it's a matter of what is your currency. And if you're creating value, if you're bringing value into this world, you will be taken care of, not by the government, but just by otherwise it's not valuable, right? Like, you can monetize it, but it doesn't need to be that doesn't need to be your intent.
Do you do motivational speaking?
I do not.
You don't? Well,
no, not
there's another entrepreneur idea for you, because I see a YouTube channel, at least.
Well, thank you. I do. Look, I am excited about the movie, not because I want to be in Hollywood or anything like that, but it will give us a platform to be able to talk about, the work we're doing in Colombia, the farm, even the city, the BLM movement and civil rights and equity. I mean, really just, I'm hoping that gets us, one of my mentors asked me, what do you want to come from this? Like the first week, and I had no idea what this was, right? Still. And I said, if anything, I would love for it to be able to open up some doors that were not open to us before. If that means, with some sort of UN food hunger program, or, climate change, or, equity role through the World Bank or something. And it started to do that. And now it's my job to be able to corral and convene those pieces together. And I'm hoping that the movie does that. I hope it does create some fans. It's, some people will see themselves in the film, and some of the characters, or in myself. I hope so. I mean, I've already felt that already. And when people stop you on the street or recognize you or something and be like, wow, that really inspired me or something, like, I know it's there. Mm-hmm. And so that's tangible. Whether the machine makes it or not, that's to be determined, but all signals say yes. So I'm excited about that.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be made. I know I've met people like you before, and I'm sure it will be made, and I'm sure it'll be good. I sense things in people, and you're a pretty easy person to read. You're going to do it, I'm sure of it.
Well, thank you. It's always, I have the right people. So if I was outside saying I'm going to be if I said I was acting in the movie, you should shut this down right now. That's not what I'm doing at all. But I am staying on as executive producer. I do a final sign off, and it does surprise the hell out of me that I have an entertainment lawyer. But
oh, that's awesome. Yeah. You're. I like your style also. I'm very similar. I don't like I'm in a band and I've done filmmaking, and I don't tell the bass player how to play the bass. I don't tell the DP how to DP. I try to communicate what I want, and then they just do something awesome, and I don't, and that's it, really,
Right.
and that seems like that's the way you work too, and that's great because I mean, if you don't know how to do that, then why would you try and tell somebody how to do their craft?
Well, I think that's look. I can tell you, there's probably a portion in my life where I was screaming for some sort of direction, and masking it and like saying that's okay because that's what leaders do, right? You see the portrayal of a football coach or the CEO or Gordon Gekko, and greed is good and backstabbing is this, right? But it's just, why is everything broken? Like,
Mm.
why is everyone mad at me? Why am I alone? Maybe this isn't working. Like, and it always felt unnatural. Like the wave of guilt when you get in an argument with a coworker, for me, I don't like it
Mm.
afterwards, right? I wish it was, but it gets heated, or someone that you love and you scream like, but you don't like you mature when you actually can take a step back and be like, you know what? Listen, I'm hangry, or I'm just in a mood. I'm feeling anxiety. Like I got pressure from X, Y, and Z, and that's on me. And I'm so okay with saying that now, because otherwise you're gonna have to like hold on to a grip that you got to remain flawless, and that's not possible.
Mm.
People are gonna see your cracks. Just identify them, for them beforehand or in the process. And I think we're very accepting.
No.
I think that's slowly changing about, the dynamic in the workplace. But there still is a lot of that facade. And you're so right. Like, we're all human. You're gonna have a bad day. You're gonna like react in a way that in retrospect, you're like, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have handled that a different way. And to just kind of talk about how you're feeling or what you're dealing with is so
Yeah,
important.
I think it's changing. I think that it's happening on the grassroots level, coworker to coworker. I think
Yes,
it's
that's true. Yeah.
being deterred. HR has just the function of human resources has disappointed me in such a huge way. I thought it really had an opportunity to be a moral backbone and kind of character driven role. It's just labor. It's labor, and legal. It's
Yeah.
sad. So I'm hoping we can see a wave away from that. Um, it's not looking too exciting when blockchain. I mean, like everyone talks to me about blockchain. I've been working with it for a while in healthcare, but like literally, it's the new game-changing technology that came out based on the fact that we can't trust each other and everyone rips each other off. Like I have a problem with that being our saving grace, is like a vault of like lack of trust for lack of trust. And like, let's not talk about the energy consumption. So I think that that you can see it in the technology that we're creating, blockchain, and then in the C-suite executive that we're anointing, which is the chief human resource officer. So it's another lever of control. And I think that the only way we're going to break through that is if there's only so many levers that you can put in place before, it's just absurd. And there's only so many more cops. Next time they're going to have to send 300 police officers, right? And then it'll be 600 police officers, because instead of 400 people, there'll be 800 people. Eventually, the military is going to have to surpass the populace. And that isn't going to happen.
Right. There's somebody, it may have been Chris Hedges, a journalist that I follow, that said like what you're talking about, at the point at which it reaches critical mass, right? Like those people, the military, the cops, they're going to look out into the crowd and see like, there's my uncle, or there's my brother, and so the point at which they're faced with that, do I crack the skulls, of my literal family? That's when people they'll start to put their, the clubs down,
The club's down, but then also like there's just no way you're going to have a police force that is going to, outrank the people. It's just not possible. And I'm not saying that there's going to be a civil war, but they're going to have to eventually stand down. right? If they can't hire 374 more police officers here, it's up to us to actually come together, right? It's continuous to us to show up and for us to convene, but not just between police shootings or like the revoking of women's rights, right? Like it's continuous. And if we do that, like the number one thing we're missing is communication. We're so connected and so disconnected at the same time. Like it terrifies me what other people's algorithms and news feeds are. I mean, I've spent a lot of time honing mine, but some 20-something-year-olds that still come over from the 70 plus that were in this house, I'm looking at theirs and it's like rap music and burgers, and like, that's cool. That's great. But like, if you're not in, like, technology is only going to feed you what you're consuming. So if you're consuming rap videos, you have no idea there's an insurrection outside your door.
Yeah,
if I'm
that's
consuming
true.
flight and travel and leisure, there's no way I understand that police are brutally executing Black men and women in America.
Yeah.
You just won't see it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
that way on a small scale too. On my Facebook, I mean, starting 2016 is when I really started to get a little political. And I used to say stuff all the time on my Facebook wall, and eventually I learned I was just talking to my, basically my high school friends, and it was kind of
Right.
silly, which is kind of the reason why I wanted to do a broadcast. But what I noticed was, after a couple of years, anytime I would say anything that was something so important that was happening in the world, it'd be like one like by the same person that always likes things like that, and they might say something, and everybody else would leave it alone. But if I showed like my kid or something, in the backyard, it'd be like 30, 40 things or something like that, comments, and I'm like, oh, okay, so really it's just they just don't want to engage
Well,
with
there's
this thing.
escapism. I mean, like people are going to social. Like there's this thing about social that is like supposed to be check out, like, and fluff. I mean, if we look at all of our programming from TV, if we look at the way that theme parks are now being developed, they're all escapist. And I love it. I love tuning out and watching a great drama or something else. I have all the streaming services, right? So I'm good for that too. But it's also like, do you live in that surrealism, or do you tie that back to your everyday reality? And I think that you're starting to see a reckoning where everyone's starting to realize that the everyday reality that they've been trying to keep in place, the 80-hour weeks. I used to tie my hour, like how many hours I would work and miles I would fly, to my self-worth. To be able to sit for 3 days, or like, and now be in like entertainment in Hollywood, like I'm not having back-to-back Zoom calls. I'm doing like 1 to 2 meetings a day, and like I struggle. I'm like, wow, I do nothing with my life. Well, like I have a lot going on. I'm just not in an office or on a Zoom or checking a box, but I'm in my head or I'm on my phone. And so it does. We're programmed that way. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm finding a lot of tranquility and peace in talking to artists, because they realize that you have to allow for things to come. Corporate innovation, as much as I want to think of myself as an artist in inception and conception, like you have to fit back into that process. I remember giving a speaking session on the process of innovation. And like, that sounds now very like there's a process to execute on that innovation, but there's no okay, like what do? Set aside 4 to 8 p.m. to say, okay, now I'm going to innovate. Like it just kind of comes to you a little bit. And then you have to seize on that spark and maybe put it into the process from there. So I think we really need to how to rework and rethink, our professional and like the way we're going about our everyday work and profession.
Like as a community, right?
I'm sorry?
As a community, like as a nation, you mean?
I think tying it into it is ridiculous. It's so I can make I understand how important work is, especially how expensive things are getting. But I had the misconception that 20-somethings and 30-somethings were all about work so they could get the Prada and the Louis Vuitton bag. It's not. It's because owning a car is damn expensive. It's filling up is damn expensive. Its rent is damn expensive. So that's why they're working 2 or 3 jobs. Like it's because not, and so they can maybe go on vacation with their friends like I used to when I was 20. And so I used to think that it was like we're falling off this cliff of materialism. Sure, for the 1% excess and all this other stuff. Fast fashion, it's you don't need to be working 3 jobs to go to Zara. You should just stop going to Zara. But it's just because things are getting so expensive. Teachers are driving Uber, at night. People living in the Bay Area are commuting an hour and a half to come into San Francisco, 2 hours. How much time do you have at home when your 4 hours your day is in transit?
Yeah. And there's this whole group of people that are voters that think, well, that's American. You've got 2 jobs. That's good for you. And but that isn't what we should be working towards. We should be working towards everyone being happier and healthier and being able to explore more interesting things and more so that we can grow better and become more connected. But if you just, I work 3 jobs, well, congratulations. No, that's bad. I'm sorry that you do.
It's not American. Like it's the person who's saying, well, my grandfather used to work 3 jobs in the coal. They're not working the 3 jobs. Someone in their family used to. The other thing is, I can see like, yes, you're supposed to work hard and do whatever. If you're working 3 jobs to throw your daughter or your sister an amazing wedding or something like that, or to put her through college or something like that. People are working 2 or 3 jobs to break even, to eat, to survive.
Yeah.
You have to make $144,000 a year in Washington, D.C. to break even for a family of 4. That is absurd, right? Because of childcare, taxes, transportation, housing. If I'm not even joking, that number is dead on. There's not a lot of people who make $144,000 a year in this country or in DC. So in order for them to do that, that's 2 jobs per parent, per adult in the household. And yeah, that's we've lost our way. It's everything has gotten more expensive. When the economy crashes, the most vulnerable and the poorest are the ones that are going to suffer the most. And that has happened ever since, you can date it back for the last thousands of years.
Yeah, it's almost like it's built into the system. Like, oh, this is where we can grab everything.
Yeah.
It seems.
I think so. I think that's why it kind of goes back to what we've been talking about earlier. It's systemic. These are, if you go by design, it was designed this way. The society is going to benefit from, the most marginalized people. They feed the system. Go to New York City. You see the high skyscrapers and the penthouses and everything below feeding everyone up on high. It's right there in front of your face.
Wow. God. Rena, you said that he wanted to share something, and did you want to do that?
I had a couple.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I mean, if you want, we can pull something up, but
I just didn't want to make sure it didn't not happen.
No, I mean, if you want, people can check out my Instagram. There's video of the farm and our endeavors in the city of Medellin and Comuna 13, and obviously some footage from June 1st, and you can follow.
I put the link in the description, but you're welcome to say it also.
Instagram in there.
Yeah, it's at Rahul Dubey, Swan Street. It's RAHULDUBEY SWANNST.
And any other ways people can follow you or some of these like really cool projects?
I've been very, very active on Instagram since then. I actually had 147 followers on May 30th, and then June 1st, I got 10,000 followers. But it's been such a resource for me to dig into the history of racism in this country and around the world, and the biggest mass exodus and kidnapping and the slave trade. Just finding authors, that are just obscure authors and then known authors, and reading up on a lot of great things. Cast is a great book. I just found some great souls, and that have reached out. I have 5 pounds of mail, handwritten letter after it happened. So someone made me a 1,001 Japanese origami cranes and like strung them all together. And so Instagram has been just a great way for people to be able to reach, and it just I've had some really beautiful late night conversations with Instagram friends, and just been able to teach me a lot. So best way to follow is probably through Instagram, or reach out through direct message, or just follow that way.
Okay, great. And so you didn't want to share something on the screen? I just heard that earlier.
I can pull up the video if you want. I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be good probably to see it. I mean,
cool. Yeah,
I would do it, but it wrecks the whole thing if I do it because I'm broadcasting. It turns into
it says only the host can share.
Sorry, that's all me. Yep.
Okay.
I'll fix that.
Okay.
I will. More.
I'm going to take a real quick break because my bladder does not hold up for a couple hours. So I'll be right back.
I'll do the same thing. I'll be right back.
All right. Well, then I will sing a song. All right. So I just made him a host. So now he's the host of the show. Well, this is interesting. I'll just let my ADHD fly. Wow. I have so many things that I want to ask him, but I also don't want to keep him forever because I always forget. I've always been told that I speak too long, longer than most people want to speak. So people would, when I used to have a store, people would come in and they'd be like, I only have a few minutes, so I'll be in and grab it and leave. And then I'll start asking them questions. And then sure enough, like time goes by. But let's look at the chat. Let's see here. Okay, if you make under $115,000 in San Francisco, you live under the poverty line. Oh my God. Wow. Well, I'm not moving to San Francisco or Washington, D.C. There's empty office buildings in San Francisco with homeless people right outside. Yeah. Oh God. I love the George Carlin thing about golf courses. What a great place to set up housing. I was just singing.
Were you actually singing?
No, I wasn't.
Technically, you could. You have that skill.
I've got the lovely bunch of coconuts.
Maybe not that, but yeah, I guess if you sang, you would get copy, we'd get flagged, right? Because you do covers.
Maybe if you didn't. Well, if you didn't, I don't know. Depends on how true to it that I did it. I don't know. I'm not really sure how that works. If I just suddenly sang a cover song. Yeah, that's weird.
Did we fix the share?
Yeah, I made you a host. You're now in charge.
Okay. So,
I don't know another way to do it. I didn't see any other way to do it. So, you flipped yourself.
Am I flipped?
Yeah, you're sideways. It's kind of interesting.
Okay, hang on 1 second.
How does that happen?
Can you see my screen or no?
No, not yet. Oh, you're on a phone. That's why.
I'm on a phone.
Oh, okay. I'm not even sure. I don't even know how to share a screen on a phone.
Okay.
Well, if you send the link to Rena, she could do it on the computer.
Oh, yeah. I guess I could pull it up.
You want me to? If I send you the link, you can pull it. Okay, perfect. Hang on 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'll make sure Rena can. I'm pretty sure you can, but I'll make sure.
Do you want a Swan Street one, or you want me to show you the Medellin, the farm? You can do.
Whatever you thought. I heard that you had something you wanted to share on screen, so I just wanted to make sure that happened.
Yeah, let me.
I think the Medellin would be really cool to see.
Cool. Let me send you that.
Okay, I will reclaim host. It's a weird procedure. And then there's nothing here to set that makes you just able to do it. So I'll make you the host, Rena, of this. And now you're
Okay.
in charge.
Now I can't share anymore. Hey, do you remember the links I shared on your Instagram? I sent them through your DM.
Let's see. Yeah, I haven't. I don't know how. I don't think I have my Instagram on the. Wait a minute. I think. Oh no, you didn't send them. I don't think I have my Instagram on the computer logged in.
If you send me the link later, I can put it in seamlessly right here when I edit it.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah, let's put it in post.
Yeah, and I'll also put the link to it in the description so people can actually watch it. But yeah, that's the thing about being on Zoom. If I do any kind of sharing screen, it messes up what's on my monitor, and then when I'm recording, turns into something bizarre.
No, you're gonna doing post anyway, so
yeah,
just drop it in. That's great.
Yeah, and this is the fun part about live right here. Is this? This is what I enjoy. Rena is uncomfortable.
I'm getting more used to the live.
Totally. You went to the bathroom.
I got up and went to the bathroom in the middle of the story. Usually I would just sit here and suffer and be like, please, Jayson, are we going to be done? So
I do want to ask my standard last question if that's where we are. It doesn't have to be the last one, but because it usually leads to a conversation. But it's a question I've asked since I was kind of like maybe a teenager or so. It's a way for me to get to know someone. I already know what you're going to say, but so picture yourself. Actually it's easy to because you're there. You're sitting where you are right now, and through the door, a person comes through that looks exactly like you. They're even wearing the same clothes that you are, except they're disheveled, dirty. They look like they've been through hell, maybe a little cut. And they say, "Come with me right now." Do you go?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I thought so.
I mean, yeah, like that's just like cool. Like, what do I need to bring? That's just
some people don't.
You said that they had daggers in their eyes. There was like blood tears or something. Like that's different. But if I see a disheveled self of my, immediately I'm thinking Back to the Future. Like, let's go. You're taking me somewhere. Or the future. Like that's just, always. I think it's you go with your gut, and usually, I'm old enough now and seen enough things now where my gut's going to tell me, and I'm not going to be right all the time. I'm leading with love, and I'm wrong a lot. I mean, and I'll find out, but the thing is, I'll find out in 2 or 3 months. Rather than. And then pull the plug and not wish them any harm, but just know. And there's some people that have ended up hurting me, or it didn't work out, or anything like that. But the 1 in the 10 that does, I'll follow you out. I'll follow all of you out, and one of them will work. So always.
Excellent. I knew that was going to be the answer. Of course.
What about you? Let me ask you that. Like,
hell yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what else am I going to do? No, stop bothering me.
Yeah, no. Let me catch up on this episode of, whatever.
Yeah.
No, like, let's go out there. I think that's, I hope that people do start listening a little bit more to their inner cavalry, like that. Let's go out there and like, let me go check and let me report back to myself. That wasn't so bad. I mean,
yeah,
Rena, to see you come, full circle from when you started Wiser Together, this kind of monastic type, like writer, very introverted, very intelligent, very great one-on-one, but like to see you push yourself to come out and do this is, that deserves for you to acknowledge that as well. That's absolute growth that I can notice and really appreciate seeing you blossom into that, which is awesome. It's outside of yourself. Every time we can get outside of ourselves and be able to add something new. Jayson, you're a musician, right? To be able to gain an understanding of a different instrument, to be able to play it, to be able to incorporate that into what you already know is massive.
Yeah. Rena, would you go with yourself?
I would probably question myself first and make them tell me something like that. Okay, if you're me, what do you ask them a question only I would know.
Right.
I would probably do some investigation first. And then if the investigation checked out, then I'd go, okay, yeah, let's see where this goes.
See, but you would say, look, we don't have time for investigation. I know what you're about to say. Here's the answer to a question that only I would know. Let's go.
Then I would go.
Because you'd have it all set.
Because then I'd be like, okay, yeah, that's me.
I got you. Right?
That's hilarious.
That's awesome.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, this was, I hope, an enjoyable conversation was for me. So
yeah, I always hate that afterwards I'm gonna think of things and questions that I'm gonna be like, why?
Get my WhatsApp information. I'm much better on WhatsApp than I am on or text than I am on email. I think there's some corporate PTSD of my inbox that I avoid.
You're so right. I don't answer like friends even. I'm like, I gotta answer an email.
Oh, email's not good.
I'm so used to like something getting hammered to me that even when I go to open it, I'm like, bad news. Like I'm gonna have to like deal with some corporate BS, bureaucracy, government, whatever. That I try not to look at it as much as possible. And like that's I've geared it up now where my main people who need to get a hold of me know how to get a hold of me. So, but yeah, send me a text, and if it's, we can chat some more.
Cool. All right. Awesome.
Yeah, and I would love to have you back when when the movies come out. That would be really, really.
Oh yeah.
I would love to talk more. Talk more of that process that I'm trying to figure out.
Oh, but, yeah, I'm up for it totally. I get so jazzed when people start talking about film. I just love it. I could do it all day.
Well, you know what? I'll send you our sizzle reel. You can tell me what you think.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been fantastic.
Rena, it was awesome reconnecting. I'm glad that we're reconnecting and stay in touch. If there's anything I could do, let me know.
Yeah. Well, I've been following your Colombia adventures on Instagram, and it's just so cool. So
I want to talk to your friend that has the avocado farm. Can he come on the show?
That's me.
No, the friend that you were.
Steven? Yeah, you know what? We can do a Steven when I'm down there. I'm sure we can.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah, do both of us. It'd be incredible. In fact, he was in the room when I was down there. I extended my trip, and we spoke to the World Bank on end racism, and so I went around to 5,000 employees around the world, and he was in my hotel room with me, and I was like, Steven. So, no, we'd love to do something.
Cool.
And maybe we could do something live from the art gallery or something like that.
That would be so cool.
Oh, yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Next trip, I'm there 5-6 times a year, so there's no rush on that.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, and you guys have an open invite anytime. Come down to Medellin. We can always do it. So great place, great music.
Probably take you up on that at some point.
I've taken 15 people have come down. There were a couple people, 70 plus, a couple of them. I took them down last October. People from Stanford, an executive from Chanel, like an executive vice president from Chanel, like one of the greatest fashion brands. She's like a dear friend of mine, but rolled up her sleeves for five days in the barrio with me, and it was great. It's just a great place to go, and just re-energize. So we'll talk definitely more about that.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot.
All right. God bless. Take care, guys.
Talk to you later.
Bye. Well,
ciao.
Shall we? Shall we end, Jayson?
Yeah, that was fantastic. Well, yeah, I don't want to. I'll let him go. Yeah, he goes on his own pace. I don't want to. I'm never going to make anybody go because I've seen so many shows where they go, all right, see you later, goodbye, and then somebody tries to say something, and then they kick them out and like, oh, they were just about to say something. So I always let them work that out.
Yeah, I let some of the time limit that does, but I mean, if you've structured it, we're like, okay, we're winding down now, but I don't like that, cutting somebody off at the end. It's like, no,
definitely
finish.
not.
Because there are some shows that, well, we're out of time now, and I'm like, but I wanted to hear what they were saying.
Yeah, and I hate when I'm doing editing. I look back and I go, oh my God, you missed a total amazing thread by not listening or something, because so much is going on, and then I'm also working stuff, and then like I go, oh my God, like Tim Kavanaugh, he said, I remember the first time I met Ray Charles, and I went, what? The first time you met Ray Charles, and we got off track, and I never got the story. Now I want to ask him, but it would be off the air, so it'll just be, only for me.
Oh, you know what? We should probably do some self-promotion.
Oh yeah,
So
do that.
Remember to like and subscribe. So if you enjoyed this conversation with Rahul Dubey, like, subscribe, and follow us on social media, The Human Happy Hour.
Yes. If you go to humanhappyhourpodcast.com, you can get to every single social media of your choice, except Snapchat. I did not set one up for that. I probably should. I always think of that as it's funny. He says he likes it so much. I guess I should think about it more, because I always think of it as something that you'll get a text, a fake text on your phone, and they'll be like, hey, it's Aaron. Is this Tim? And I'll be like, now I say yes and play with them for a while. But before I used to go, no, I'm sorry. They'd be like, oh, that's too bad. Can we be friends? And I'm like, what? And then they go, can you actually go to my Snapchat? So I got a bad feeling about Snapchat now, because it happens so often. I was like, oh, Snapchat's for people that are trying to get me to talk to them about something weird. I don't know what it is, but
I've been getting a lot of those texts. I used to not get those texts, but now it's been, I've had like 4 of them. One, like a half naked woman. And I was like, what is this?
Oh, she sent you a picture.
Yeah, she said, like, is this, I forget what the guy's name was, but it sounded Italian, I feel like. I mean, I deleted it, so I obviously don't have it anymore. And I was like, what is, like, it's like, it was like, hi, like, Leonardo, this is like, love to see you again. And I'm like, well, that's not me. I'm like, I just, and I was like, should I tell this woman that she sent a stranger a topless photo? But then I'm like, it could also be spam. And I'm like, I'll just delete it.
I just don't know if there's any consequences for talking to them. Some tech person might be like, oh my God, don't talk to them.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't know. I just assume that that iPhone text is just completely bulletproof or whatever. But I now talk to them for a while. I'm immediately the person they thought I was. And then I say, but did we know each other in college? And then they'll be like, yeah, I think it is that. And I'm like, really? What? Really? So what class were we in together? And then they'll be like, something else. They'll just change the subject. I like going on and on and on and on and on. It's very fun.
It is a scam. But yeah, part of me, I was like, should I tell this woman that a stranger has her topless photo? And then I'm like, no, it's probably a scam, and I should probably not answer this thing. She probably knows that she's sending. She probably knows she's sending a stranger.
Very considerate of you.
And she's like, but yeah, that was my thought. I'm like, maybe I should tell her that. But I'm like,
what would you type? Would you say, you just sent a stranger a topless photo of yourself?
No, I would be like, hey, this isn't Leonardo. Just maybe I thought I should let you know that, maybe double check who you're sending.
Oh, that's hilarious. Oh my God, that's funny.
But yeah.
All right.
Oh.
Well, that was really fun. That guy, he's super, super, super energetic, and like that's why I said motivation. Like motivation, I felt like I'm gonna go do something.
He's awesome. Like, he's always had really good energy, so it was really cool to connect with him again.
Oh yeah, totally.
But all right, so I guess we can say goodbye to everybody. Thank you.
Yes, thanks
for
a lot.
Watching.
And all the future people that will be watching the edited version, which I will start possibly tomorrow. All right. And talk to you later.